faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock tick faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock tick 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 tick. The clock tick 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 faster. Living off borrowed time. The clock 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 tick faster.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's Living Off Borrowed Time podcast. I am your host, Patrique on RYM, Patrick McGovern. I introduce myself differently every week because I don't know how to do introductions. And joined as always by OptimalAudio on RYM, Caleb. Okay. I don't know. I need to just record an introduction and then just play it, just have a canned introduction and then just bring it in. I don't know how other podcasts do this. I don't know if you listen to Behind the Bastards, but Robert Evans has refined his introduction to where he just makes guttural noises. And I think that would actually be an improvement to just act startled and podcast. What? That's so much of an improvement on whatever the fuck that I do every week and somehow manage to make it worse.
I feel like there was a time when we used to do halfway cold opens, and it worked, I guess, sometimes better than the current introduction format.
Well, for some reason, I can't remember how I introduced myself, and I've just gotten worse at it when I try and remember it. I don't know. When we were ripping off Dead End Hip Hop, it worked much better. Just kind of coming in on the conversation as opposed to trying to remember a general introduction script. I don't know. This week we're kicking around. Okay, so this is an idea that I've been kicking around. I've hinted at in previous episodes this season, where basically we're going to look at baby pictures of famous rappers, where sometimes they're projects that they tried to bury, sometimes they're projects that were buried by labels, basically before they got famous. And yeah, I think this is an interesting topic to look at where a lot of our favorite rappers, some of our less favorite rappers started out, and how they got to where they are now, if it's relevant, if it's something that they wanted to do, if it's something that they came up with to just try and break out, something the label forced upon them. Sometimes they came out fully formed, other times they sound completely different. And I kind of hit the whole spectrum going through my homework for this project. So, and just fair warning, a lot of times we do discographies for this project, and it's we give everything an intense deep dive listen. A lot of these I did not do that for.
No, me neither. I listened to most of them in the last 24 hours or so, so they're fresh, but most of them didn't really leave much of an impression on me. I think the more interesting discussion point is where it, the fact that it lands in the early stages of, insert artist here's career. And I think that's kind of what we were talking about when you initially brought up this idea on the Gibbs episode of that we should do this in the first place, because right. you had mentioned the Live from Gary series and that being a baby pictures version of Freddie,
right?
Compared to what he became.
I mean, that would be, well, since you mentioned it, we maybe should start there, but I actually thought that I just got hit by leaves. Maybe we should start there, but I thought maybe chronologically we should start with the earliest project I listened to, because I think that the prototypical one would probably be both the RZA and GZA projects before they were known by those names, because kind of what essentially the whole part of the Wu-Tang mythology is that the label, when they tried to break out, the label Tommy Boy, I believe it was, in both their cases, kind of forced them to do stuff that the industry wanted to do that wasn't necessarily to their strengths. So instead of having the Abbott, the RZA, the Resurrecta, and even though GZA went by the name The Genius, they were both not exactly that when they started out. Instead, we had Prince Rakeem and The Genius, and they both wanted to fuck some ladies.
They did. Now, I just want to say, the first two songs I listened to just respectively. The second one because of where it's placed on the album, but we've got the RZA's song is Prince Rakeem. Ooh, I love you, Rakeem. And then followed up immediately by "Come Do Me," which is just a 1-2 punch if I've ever heard one myself.
Yes, and it's an interesting contrast in styles because neither of these songs, like, they both don't sound comfortable. The
No.
RZA song, the Rakeem song, he sounds very disinterested and disengaged with it. Like, he sounds kind of like he's mumbling his way through it. Like, like, you can already tell he can rap, and there's a little bit of the RZA's kind of like motor mouth style to it, but he's listless is the way I describe it. GZA sounds irritated. GZA sounds straight up annoyed that ladies are not coming to do him.
Yeah, it's a little. It's a little. Jizzes is definitely. I mean, I don't know if problematic's the right word, but it's just a little more like. I don't know. There's. I mean, I actually think I mean, they're both bad. They're both to me bad songs, but they're. I found the "I Love You, Rakeem" song to be more irritating, just because. I mean, that song is 1991. Does that song sound like 1984? Like, what is that beat? It's so lifeless and dull. It's like I'm listening to like a really bad Slick Rick song. And I'm not saying like, I mean, I've never been like a huge Slick Rick fan, but like I know the good songs. But like, to me, the bad Slick Rick, like, could sound kind of like that. Like if he's doing a bad sex jam or something. Obviously the good Slick Rick, like Children's Story, we know that. But I just mean it sounds even earlier than Slick Rick. To me, it sounds like mid '80s or something. Like the beat sounds so much older than '91, and whatever is going on. Did you see the music video for this, by the way?
I did not, and
Okay.
I'll have to look at that.
It's like some like Saved by the Bell at like time. Yeah, it's like a high school video. Yeah.
I can see that because this definitely, like, what I came up with. I've been writing reviews. I've not published them yet, but I wrote reviews for at least this one. I don't know if I wrote reviews for the Genius one yet, but my idea of this song is that it's like Robert Diggs, the person, is basically at a bunch of parties and he's getting rejected by girls. So in his head, he comes up with this like character, Prince Rakeem, who has all the girls saying, "Ooh, I love you, Rakeem." In his head, that's what's happening. But in reality, he just keeps getting rejected. And then
It's like
he goes and he smokes some angel dust. He becomes Bobby Digital, the real life superhero.
it's like a hip hop version of the scene in 500 Days of Summer, where Joseph Gordon-Levitt is like expectations versus reality, and his expectation is he's gonna like smash Zooey Deschanel, but the reality is she ignores him the whole night.
And yeah, like even the background singers in this song sound disinterested in what Rakeem is selling to them. Like everything about the song, like you were talking about how it sounds dated. Both the Genius song and the RZA song have Easy Mo Bee beats, and I will not front like I am an expert on the time period on what. Like I feel like Easy Mo Bee was just cranking them out at this point, and both of them sound lifeless. The GZA song actually has the Genius song. I don't want to call him GZA yet because he wasn't GZA yet, but that has a bit more kick to it, although it still sucks. Like, don't get me wrong. Both the beats are corny as hell.
Yeah.
But the RZA beat just lays there, man. That's just like, there's nothing to it.
It's so atypical for a RZA beat. I guess this is kind of the point of this episode. Like, it just caught me off guard. I think I heard the song like maybe once before, but genuinely, I don't remember hearing it. And so when I played it like this morning, I was like, the fuck is this shit? Like it was so like I said, like atypical and different from RZA. And like like you said, the background singers sound disinterested. He sounds disinterested. He also kind of like the rhymes he's doing are like not like it's trying to make lyrical spiritual miracle bars with sex. Like that never works. And I don't know, it's just not like Easy Mo Bee, I mean, compared this to like the work he would do on like Biggie albums, like it's just way different. Like we know he can do so much better.
Right. And well, the thing is, you talk about super lyrical miracle. This came out on a single. Like GZA Genius, again, I'm gonna keep correcting myself, had a whole album that I guess we'll get to in brief next. But Rakeem only had the one single. And there are two other songs on there. One, off the top of my head, I don't have the RYM up right this second, was, I believe, Deadly Venoms or something, which is as close to a RZA song as you're going to get. Like, the second verse on that almost sounds a little bit like a dry run for 36 Chambers era RZA. But then we have a song called Sexcapades.
Sexcapades.
And 4 versions of this song on there. 4 versions.
I'm pretty sure one of them is an instrumental too. So if you want to hear the boring ass beat, you can hear the instrumental too.
Once again, if you try, I don't know. It was a different time. I don't know if these songs actually got anybody laid. Least of all RZA, but
I would hope not. Just for the sake of anyone involved. Like I would just imagine that would be. I mean, what is it? 91. I'm sure there was other music coming out in 91 that was better suited for.
Well, I mean, like, this was the New Jack Swing era. We're talking, like, I guess it was past New Edition. It was Bobby Brown. It was Boyz II Men. It was Albie Shore. All of which I found to be unappealing, but at least I can see why, like, there was what the appeal was supposed to be, at least. Well, I can see why girls would be into it. I can't see any girl throwing, play that, I love you, Rakeem. Oh, man, put on that are you throwing Come Do Me in the car? And it's like, oh, well, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, seems a little on the nose. I mean, I do think. Yeah. I mean, the best rap song of '91 to me is "Mine Playing Tricks on Me," the Ghetto Boy song, which is definitely not a song to get laid to. So I don't know.
Yeah, throw on that Bushwick Bill in the bedroom.
Amazing song, but not one that I'm. I mean, this is not a you thing, but Loveless did come out in 91 on the non-hip hop side, and apparently I've learned in my days on the website that people fuck to Loveless. So I don't know. Don't ask me, but that's what I've heard, that apparently some people fuck to Loveless. So maybe that's what was going on.
Well, I would prefer. I listened to most of the Genius album. I guess we can transition to that now. And it was better than Loveless, which is the faintest praise I can imagine. The thing is that the Genius album,
absolute slander. I have to sit here and listen to this mid-album be praised over Loveless.
It is a mid-album. But the thing is, in terms of what it would promise for the career, this is actually not that far off from GZA. I mean, he's not rap. Basically, he raps in the same sort of, like, he has the same sort of vocal tone he would have. He has the same sort of approach. It's just not as complex, quote unquote. Like, if you listen to this, then you listen to 36 Chambers, then you listen to Liquid Swords. The main difference is he would slow it down a little bit, and he would be rapping in less of that, like, stereotypical late 80s, early 90s rap pattern.
Where it's like ABC rap.
More or less, yeah. And like,
it's like, I'm going to say a rap, then I'm going to say another rap. And you're like, all right. I get it. He had, like, slightly more advanced concept. Like, that was the other thing, is when he became GZA, he would have something like Labels, where he would have a higher concept for it, like wordplay. He would introduce more involved wordplay. The wordplay on this is pretty basic. I guess by 1990 standards, not so much, but it's mostly just about how an MC is whack. And Genius is not whack. So you should listen to him because he's not whack. There is one track on here, I believe it's the one right after Come Do Me, which is, I think, Phony As They Wanna Be, which actually makes me think that almost like he's trying to make up for Come Do Me, because Phony As They Wanna Be, I think, might be a diss on 2 Live Crew. Nasty As They Wanna Be, Phony As They Wanna Be. Like, he's dissing on the non-lyrical rappers. I have nothing to back that up, but it seems like not that much of a reach. I mean, 2 Live Crew at that time I'm trying to see, when were they in their careers? They were... Nasty As They Wanna Be was 89. They banned in the USA was the year after. So yeah, they were still a thing. Like, they were definitely relevant.
So I could see him being like, that Miami-based shit is just popular because it's controversial. I'm gonna hit you with the real lyrics. And honestly, I mean, like, it's fine. It's not that interesting. I couldn't get through the whole thing. Anytime he raps about the late, like, Come Do Me is the worst offender, but there are a few lady songs on here. They're sprinkled about.
Silly Girls.
They're all pretty bad.
The Silly Girls one.
Yeah. Like, they definitely they reek of label suggestions, and he feels like he's gritting his teeth through all of them. Like, again, Come Do Me feels like he was doing it at gunpoint. Like, he sounds irritated as hell throughout. The other ones he seems more invested in, but this is the sort of album you listen to after you've listened to all the other Genius albums, Jizza albums, and you kind of appreciate it in retrospect, but I don't see anybody coming back to it and being like, oh yeah, lost classic. I mean, this is also kind of colored by the fact that I've moved past the point in my rap listening rap listening life, I guess, where I'm really that impressed with Jizza in general. I mean, part of it is, and I kind of touched on this in the last episode with Germ, like, he's one of those old rappers who shouldn't be on social media. I don't need to hear Jizza's views on vaccines. Like, don't stop.
Oh, it's that bad.
It's not good, man.
I have not kept up with Jizza.
I only know it because somebody posted it, maybe Hidden Track, or somebody posted in the Discord that there was a meme that he posted about, like, we've had a vaccine for the flu for 60 years, but we still have the flu. Thinking emoji.
It's the meme of what's the guy pointing to his head? Is that
yeah? And it's like, maybe you weren't as smart as we thought this whole time, Jizza.
It is. I mean, I still think I probably listen to Liquid Swords like a couple times every winter, just because like I think it still holds up.
Liquid Swords is the ultimate. Is one of the ultimate cold weather albums. It's right up there with Cold Vein, like in terms of just the beats and the raps alike. But the thing about Liquid Swords is it has this reputation for being super intellectual, when really I think it's best taken as just like cold ass battle rap.
Yeah, it kind of knocks for that era too. Like it not. When you listen to the production now, like I don't think it's. I mean, obviously everything is aged to a certain degree, but I still think that like the beats on that, the breaks on that are not like super. I mean, it's an atmosphere album first and foremost, which I think helps a lot of Wu-Tang albums. Like Wu-Tang albums still go hard now because they're first and foremost like energy and atmosphere is what they pride themselves on. But then like they're still like really great beats. Like I mean, you could still listen to like Cold World like that. Someone could make that now. I'm sure people have ripped that off in the last like 10 years. Like, so I still think that Liquid Swords, kind of like how other Wu-Tang albums like inspired a lot of shit. I think, years and years later, like people still trying to sound like this. I feel like Liquid Swords, people could still try to do what RZA is doing on that, maybe to a lesser degree, like as opposed to when it first came out. But I still think that RZA's beats on there have a quality that when you listen to any other Jizza solo album, at least that I've heard, like it's not even close.
Well, I feel like first of all, I feel like Liquid Swords influenced pretty much the whole immediate afterwards, both like MCing and like rapping and in terms of beats, like the whole, maybe not so much Anacon, like I don't, again, I'm not Battered Sphinx, I'm not an expert on that, but like the whole Def Jux and that whole scene, like they all tried to sound like futuristic in that same sort of way, and the rapping tried to sound both like the marriage of intellectual and battle rap, like tried to sound like that for a few years. Like that was the gold standard for her, and it still sounds tough today. Like I feel like even though Jizza has also tried to recap, like in the same way, like people always argue, oh, Nas tried to capture Illmatic, Nas might not ever live up to Illmatic. I feel like you can argue Nas tried very hard. He wasn't trying to recap. Like I think he tried very hard, possibly to his detriment, to get away from that. Like work with different concepts, like sometimes like real galaxy brain shit that didn't work out for him. Like I don't think you can argue Street's Disciple is trying to sound like Illmatic. It's certainly not good, but it's not trying to sound like Illmatic. Whereas I think Jizza always had like every Jizza album is going to have one or two tracks that try and do the same thing as labels, like where they take a proper, like every line has like a proper noun that ties into a bigger concept sort of thing. But it's never going to be as good as labels. It's never going to sound that fresh again. Like he's always going to have that sort of, like I feel like Jizza is more guilty of that than somebody like Nas. Like he still lives in the shadow of the album, and I feel like he tries very hard to live up to its reputation by invoking it every time out. And he's kind of given up too. Like he'll when Jizza tours now, he's touring Liquid Swords. He's not touring Pro Tools.
I don't think you wouldn't pay money to go see a Pro Tools concert.
He still owes me $12 for Pro Tools. Actually, I think. So,
you bought that in like 2008 when it came out?
I bought both Pro Tools and Digi-Snacks. I couldn't afford my fucking rent that summer, but I bought both Pro Tools and Digi-Snacks. So both RZA and Jizza owe me combined $24.
That could have been money well spent.
I was eating like fucking pretzels and ramen noodles that summer. So I should have
Oh,
been.
damn. Summer of 2008, rough
That was
summer.
a rough. Oh, and Untitled. I also bought Untitled. Speaking of Nas, I bought a lot of whack ass albums that summer.
I mean, 2008 was a pretty rough year for rap music. That was probably the worst year of the 2000s for rap.
It was.
I mean, I'm trying to think of. I mean, you had like there were good albums in '08, but I'm trying to look at the rap charts right now, and I'm thinking of outside of 808s, like what else came out? Let me look here. I mean, I guess I mean, the Mad Lib Beat Conducted Volume 5. Okay, that's fair.
Right.
You had
that's almost cheating though. Like I actually get my iPad.
Hey, a Charles Hamilton project came out that year. It's supposed to be a good one.
Was it black? Was it the Pink Lava Lamp?
Yeah, it's the one that you've heard. Yeah, I see you rated it. Yeah,
Pink Lava Lamp. I actually wanted to. Thing was, I actually wanted to get back to the Charles Hamilton project for this episode, but it's so hard to find reliable information on what his first project was. I couldn't find an accurate baby picture. So
that's fair.
Charles. No Chaos Emeralds for Charles this week.
I will say it is sad though that in the RYM charts of 2008, number 16 on the hip hop charts that year is a Doomtree album, which I'm sure is not good.
Shout out to Moo Kid for who will never fail to remind you. He grew up in Minneapolis, and Doomtree. He said the sign of a lame was a Doomtree button on a backpack. So you could spot a lame from a mile away with a Doomtree button on a backpack. Prince episode coming soon. Moo Kid, get back to us. But
true.
So yeah, I would say that you don't really ever need to hear either of these. If you're a diehard Wu stan, then maybe the Genius album. I think it's hilarious that it leads off with Come Do Me because it's not really representative, although I guess it does kind of portend the other lady songs on there, but none of them are that. It's just funny that in 1990, it's like, okay, you're this hard-nosed battle rapper who calls yourself the Genius. Now make a song called Come Do Me.
Well, I think it's funny that the first official song of Jizz's career is Come Do Me, because it's his first album and it's the lead-off song. And if you look at his singles, isn't it like, I think it's like the first single.
Yep.
So really, Jizza could only go up from there in his career.
It's not hard to, if you listen to that, then listen to Labels, it's not hard to see why he's so pissed off on Labels. Tommy was not his motherfucking boy. So we have that. I'm trying to think of where a good place to go would be next from here. Do you just want to fire off rappers and we can talk about what we listen to?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, all right. Speaking of non-representative rappers, Kendrick Lamar, I would say.
Yes.
This should have been a surprise to me. I'd heard a lot of early Kendrick stuff, and none of it's good prior to... I would say prior to Overly Dedicated, nothing's worth hearing, and I'm not even a biggest fan of Overly Dedicated. But I'd heard C4, and so this shouldn't have been a surprise to me that Minor of the Year, I'll use that title because I can't really use the other title, YNIC. I can't really spell that out on air, but we know what it stands for. It also goes by Minor of the Year. What was funny was when this circulated, I guess, at shows and among Kendrick circles when it came out, and then was kind of quietly buried. And then after Good Kid, Mad City dropped, this came out on Smoking Section. I guess it got like a re-release, I guess. And this guy at work came up to me. He's like, "Yo, you got to hear the new Kendrick, man. You won't believe what he's doing with his voice. He sounds like he's like 15 years old."
And lo and behold, he was 16. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's amazing is he doesn't really sound like he's 16 years old. He sounds like he's Jay-Z the whole fucking time.
Yeah, which is one of two projects that I was going to talk about that sounds like Jay-Z. But yeah, this one, the whole C4 was already like later enough. Like, what's weird about C4, I know it was a Lil Wayne dedication, but like Kendrick Lamar EP came out the same year, and that's like a perfectly fine EP. Like it's got some good songs on there. It's way too long. I mean, it's an hour. It's not really an EP, but it's got like some cool tracks on there, and like you could see where Kendrick was going. It feels like his first actual project. But when you listen to stuff like that YNIC or like C4 stuff like that, you're just like, okay, like it's very I am putting this like mixtape together, and my flow and delivery need serious work.
Well, the thing about it is, it's actually the first few tracks you listen to on this. It's almost impressive in the sort of way that a Game doing, like something Game would do if he ever did a song with Jay. Which did Game ever actually? Excuse me. Game ever actually do a song with Jay? I don't think so. But I think he always, like, from the immediate time he came out, he was always throwing subliminals at Jay, and Jay.
Yeah, they always had beef. Well,
I mean, it was a very
the Game had, yeah.
It was very much Game being like, "Notice me, senpai," over and over and over.
It was beef in the same way that I have beef with
Wale.
No, hey, that is not one-sided.
That is true.
Wait, hold on. We have to hold the pod. We never talked about this on the podcast. I was supposed to do an intro.
Detour now because
detour about like a month ago. Your boy over here was called out on Twitter by noted rapper, singer extraordinaire, poet extraordinaire, Wale. Wale called me out on Twitter because I responded to a journalist who I really like, who was talking about how Drake's part on Diced Pineapples is peak Drake. And I said, my response was, shame about the Wale intro. And I got blitzed by Wale stans in the replies who said that the intro was easily the best part of the song. And, that's the reason why people listen to the song. So, which, I mean, if that's the reason, then you guys all need help. But I believe... I believe them. Like a lot of people responded. And then even the original journalist, once I was like, oh, I didn't know this was unpopular, he was like, yeah, this is a shaky take. You're going to have to hold this or whatever. And I was like, all right, thanks. So then after he
kind of hung you out to dry.
He did, because after he said it, then I was going to get ratioed. It was only a matter of time. So then I got ratioed by a bunch of Wale stans who were like roasting me. And then, I got my profile picture got posted in the replies, and people were like, oh, clearly he's never fucked or whatever. You never had that Wale on. You never. The easy quote from like the middle-aged or like the mid-30-something guy is like, young boy never felt touch of a woman. And I'm like, all right, guys, like relax. Anyway, after all this was going on, and I had stopped replying long ago. I only sent a few replies. They kept replying to me, and then eventually, because one of my replies was, "Oh, the intro, it's like corny and gross." So Wale replies, and he says that I was saying that not his intro is corny and gross, but the actual concept of sex is corny and gross. And he was like, I have to laugh. So once Wale came for me, that one got a bunch of likes, and I just got ratioed. So you hate to see it. But in the end of the day, I responded to Wale, and I was like, hey, I'd like to know where I said that. And he didn't respond to me because I'm right. But I kind of felt like the Hannibal Buress meme where it's like, why are you yelling at me? I'm right. Which is really, or why are you booing me? I'm right. Because really that's what that thread was. Everybody else booing me. There was like 3 people that came to my defense and like my tweet about it being gross. But it was a tough look for your boy out here. So now Living Off Borrowed Time has beef with Wale, which to me never bothered me because I never liked his music. So if you listen to Wale anymore, especially in 2020, don't listen to this podcast.
Yeah, you're now on I think you were probably already on the list, the ever-growing list of people who are not allowed to listen to the podcast, but now you're like highlighted in bold-faced font on the list. Wale fans not allowed to listen to it. I will say this, is that the act of sex is clearly not gross, nor did you ever say that. However, the act of sex is described in the Diced Pineapples poem by Wale, where he describes he doesn't need foreplay, he's going to give you 5.
Give me 5.
Shushes the poor lady, that there's going to be no more talking.
No more talk. Which when I put those lines on Twitter as reasoning for it being gross, people were like, "Well, clearly you've never had sex before." I didn't know that. I didn't know that being rapey was part of sex. I didn't know that was a thing.
And also, think about who he's hanging out with on that song. He's hanging out with Rick Ross, who will put a Molly in your drink and you ain't even know it.
Right.
And Drake, who, when your girl goes to the bathroom, he's gone right through her purse.
Right through her purse.
So,
and that's the thing. Drake, that Drake song hadn't come out yet. Maybe Drake was taking inspo from Wale. He's like, Wale, and when they shot the music video, told him, hey, listen here, you got to go through their purse when they go to the bathroom.
Right, and make sure you get her pin so you can go through the text. You got Got to go through all that stuff. And I think this might have been around the time that another Drake classic consent anthem, She Will, came out.
It was She Will was I think the year or two after, but yes,
They're all part of the same wave of just like
I think it was
very gray area songs.
I mean, well, the She Ain't Even Know It one, I would argue, is not gray area. The other ones,
no, that's we're getting to a very black hole at that point.
Isn't it like people really have just let Rick Ross cook after saying that? And like honestly, for the better, just because he's put out good material since then. But like Rick Ross, why?
And the thing is, he put out some responses to that in verses, and he pretty much was just like, yeah, and I said it. Your point? Like, fuck Reebok for taking away my deal. Oh man, there's a great shout out to Phil No BEP, Broken Equipment Productions, who came up with some of the funniest YouTube videos of all time back in the infancy of YouTube, the Dipset the Movie videos. If you've never seen them, you really need to look them up. I've never seen those. Oh my God, you'll spend an evening on YouTube looking up Dipset the Movie, Broken Equipment Productions. They're like these, and they also have We Are Young Money movies, which are just like these parodies of rappers that are, I cannot believe you haven't seen these. If you get nothing else out of this podcast, don't listen to any of these lame-ass intro to rapper things. Just watch Broken Equipment videos all night. But they have one where, like, they make fun of Rick Ross a lot, and there's, like, one where, like, Drake and Lil Wayne go to hang out with Rick Ross, and he opens the door, and it's like, hey, Rick Ross, why are you wearing Skechers? He's like, I gotta wear Skechers, because I can't wear Reeboks no more. Because I put a Molly in some girl's drink, and she ain't even know it. I'm not doing it justice. It's amazing. But speaking of You Ain't Even Know It, you know who didn't embarrass themselves on that song was Kendrick Lamar with the You Ain't Even Know It remix. But long before that, he did embarrass himself by doing a mixtape full of Jay-Z impressions that, like we said, I don't know how. Yeah, we somehow got way off topic here and
way off topic. Well, because we had to. We had
to address the Wale beef. We had to address the Wale beef.
Once every couple episodes, Diced Pineapples is brought up. And like I said, since we don't have the episode anymore where you read it live on air, which was really just a classic moment in the podcast.
And I won't try and recreate that because that was a time. That was just like when we had Trav read from Supermarket. You just can't recreate it.
You can't, although we will have Trav do some reading later at some point this year. But
yes, there will be another reading that, again, that's going to be a very special treat for everybody. But yeah, this Kendrick this EP, I guess is an EP mixtape. It's like I said, it's very much like one of those Game verses. If Game did something with Jay, he would do this. But imagine that at like not peak skill level over the course of an entire mixtape. It gets old quick. It's like fun for a little bit, but then you see what he's doing and it just runs out of gas. There's one track on here though with Freeway and Joe Budden where I don't think anybody told Freeway and Joe Budden this wasn't actually a Jay-Z tape because they both go the fuck in. Like, they're actually on a Jay-Z album. It's like top 5 Joe Budden verse. I know Faint Praise and all that. Great-ass Joe Budden verse. Great Freeway verse. Kendrick's barely on it. If you're going to seek out anything, seek that out. Because it's from that period where Freeway wasn't really putting anything out. But if he wasn't a feature, he was going to kill it. Like, that period between when Rockefeller Fell Apart and Stimulus Package with Jake 1 came out. Underrated classic album, by the way. Stimulus Package with Jake 1. Good-ass album. So
you think Freeway or Beanie Siegel for most tragic career in that whole like Rockefeller adjacent circle?
Beanie went to jail because everyone threw him under the bus, so I would say Beanie probably. And then Beanie's like, 50 will save my career. And then ask anybody who ever has 50 to save their career how that works out.
I mean,
save 50's career. So
he cannot. Yeah, the only I actually haven't heard.
Wait, I think Freeway signed with G Unit. Maybe I got them mixed up. Maybe they both. One of them definitely signed with G Unit for a minute, and it didn't work out. Because that was when G Unit was signing like everybody. Because I think 50 was just signing everyone out of spite because he could.
I mean, that was definitely peak 50 in terms of like what he was doing.
Like, he got Jim Jones to diss Cam on a G-Unit mixtape just because. Like, he definitely... that was, like, facilitating the fall of Dipset. And, oh, man, that was something I should have gotten on for this is early Cameron stuff. Like, Children of the Corn. Because that had, like, Mace back before Mace was with Diddy. And there might even have been a Cam and Jay song on there. That was something I missed out on for this episode. That would have been interesting. But I just thought of it now. Because that was when they were working with Big L. And... I mean, what I really wanted to look at was Hawaiian Sophie, but that Yeah, there will be no early J on this one. This is the closest you're going to get to early J, is Kendrick rapping really badly like Jay-Z. So.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have much to say about this because I heard it so long ago, and it left. It was not good, and it left very little impression on me. Besides, this is not good, and the worst Kendrick project. So,
I think C4 is worse because C4 has some of the worst Absol verses ever.
C4 is bad. Yeah, C4 is bad. The random project that he and J Rock did actually has a couple decent songs. It's just like eternity long.
Well, J Rock was the only one who came out like. I think J Rock had more experience. I think he's probably older because early J Rock stuff is like, again, he had the problem that like Kendrick sounds like Game doing Jay-Z. J Rock just sounded like Game for a while. Like some of that early J Rock stuff sounds like straight up Game early.
Well, J Rock came up right after Documentary came out, basically, like within a few years after. So he was definitely influenced by Game because everybody at the West Coast was dead in the mid 2000s until Game, really. At least from a somewhat mainstream perspective.
Well, so, I mean, it's like Kendrick said on Black Boy Fly. I used to be jealous of Jason Taylor. So yeah, it definitely was a big influence on all of them. And I don't think J Rock was biting so much as he was just influenced by. Like that was the sound. So, but yeah, J Rock's early stuff is probably the only early TD stuff you really need to check for. I don't think again, I was a latecomer to Kendrick. It took a while for him to Section 80 didn't even hit me really that hard at first. Now, obviously, I think it's a great album. But I don't think that anything more overly dedicated is really necessary.
No. I agree with that.
And I don't think this is, aside from giving you an impression of who Kendrick looked up to in terms of Wayne and Jay, in terms of the influences, it's useful. But you're only ever going to listen to this shit once as a curiosity, if that. And yeah, it's like a party trick that gets old. Like, oh, he can rap like Jay. And that's it. So, who do you want to bring up?
It's a good question. I was thinking about this episode. We were spitballing back and forth of some people to bring up. And actually, my first thought was, it wasn't my first thought, but I was thinking Wayne. But then we know what early Wayne is because, I mean, he was doing a lot of those mixtapes and then his early Block is Hot era stuff. Or is it kind of interesting to hear Wayne at such a young age, just because Lil Wayne's been rapping for fucking ever.
Yeah.
Lil Wayne when was 11, 12 when he was when Birdman noticed him and he was rapping. So I think that's an interesting point to bring up because if you look at his career, he was either doing features or he was doing stuff on Hot Boys albums, which is really.
Since you mentioned Birdman, that leads into somebody I want to talk about. Somebody that I think most people don't associate with Birdman, probably don't know worked with Birdman, is Danny Brown. Worked with Birdman on his very first project many years, I think before he went to prison, because he went to prison for a few years. He talks about this in his music a lot, most notably on Old. Because Old is kind of his autobiographical album, although he touches on autobiographical stuff throughout all of his albums. Old is the one that kind of tells his story the most through side A and side B. Side A is pre-prison, side B is after, and the change in his music as well. But he's alluded to it. It's basically he was in a group with what would eventually become Bruiser Brigade. Started out as Reservoir Dogs. I am not going to try and pronounce the name of this fucking album, because I have trouble with normal words on this show and normal names, but it's the Reservoir Dogs album. It's I don't fucking know. It came out in 2003. It was a mixtape. It's Danny, Dopehead, and Chips, who still are associated with Danny. I don't know if Chips is. Dopehead definitely is. They were both on the Bruiser Brigade album that he released on Twitch a few years ago. And this basically came out on a label. It did not come out on Cash Money, but the Birdman association is definitely there because he's on 3 or 4 tracks. And this album, mixtape, whatever, they refer to it as a mixtape on the intro, feels, and this is so funny given recent-ish events, like Birdman is trying to make a Clips album with Danny Brown. I swear to fucking God.
I believe it. I wish I heard it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it to you. All the beats are knockoff, the cheapest $10 knockoffs of Neptune's beats that you could ever get at the time. It's basically What Happened to That Boy happened, and Birdman's like, oh yeah, Playboy, this sounds like a winning formula here, but he couldn't actually Pusha probably already hated him. They're like, where's my money? Birdman's like, check's in the mail, but the check was not really in the mail. Birdman's already deciding this is how he's going to make money off of it. I thought about it because you mentioned Wayne had been rapping since he was like 11, and Birdman kind of had this sort of Jermaine Dupri like child star factory approach to like pumping out rappers. He would always do that like from Wayne onward, like Hot Boys, Baguette, like Lil Twist and Gutta Gutta, the Young Money people, like diminishing returns, obviously, like little child star rappers. And he was kind of trying to do the same thing with like the factory approach here, and it's hilarious. Let's Get It Crackin' is it's like basically the Neptunes Drop It Like It's Hot beat or something like that, or maybe even like Dre Truth Hurts beat, that addictive beat for Truth Hurts, something like that, but it is so budget. And if you ever wanted to hear Danny Brown do a Pharrell impression, it's on that song. So Danny Brown in 2003 doing a Pharrell impression while his weed carriers do slightly worse Pharrell impressions over the like worst knockoff Pharrell beat you've ever heard. That is about as bad as this gets. There are actually 2 or 3 tracks on here. Oddly enough, the songs with Birdman, where Danny raps like closer to the Danny you'd know. At the very least, like Hot Soup, hybridish era Danny. Like, he doesn't use the crazy voice. Like, if you know early Danny, like First Detroit State of Mind, again, Hot Soup, he's very influenced by Nas. He was gruffer. He wasn't doing the higher register stuff that he'd start doing around Hybrid, where he'd start really, like, fucking with his voice, like, in a way that some people would find irritating, where it was, like, had a lot more character to it. But his voice always had character. And he can't even bury that here, although there's, like, tracks where it's clearly the idea is that they're the re-up gang. But they're, like, the discount re-up gang.
Right.
So it's not a terrible listen. I think I have it at a 6, but that's like coming from like one of the biggest Danny Brown stands in the world. It's probably closer to like a 5. The Birdman stuff is very much in the lane. Like the Birdman tracks aren't like funny bad. Like you're not getting too many hot hand rub 16s out of him. He kind of just shows up and does ad libs. Like if you've heard the tour Volume 1, that's like the quote unquote features you're getting here out of Birdman. Which is probably for the best. Like, really, who needs that much Birdman rapping? You just want him to show up and talk shit. It's Life's a Bitch is probably the highlight here. It riffs on the Nas song you would expect. It's the one hook that doesn't try and be a Pharrell or Clips hook. And it's kind of just taking the most famous line from the Nas song and riffing on it. So that's pretty good. About a third of this is surprisingly decent. If you're really into Danny, like lyrical Danny, not like crazy Danny, there's something to be said for, like, I'd recommend checking it out, actually. And the stuff that's not actually good is just interesting to hear something so uncharacteristic. Trying to hear Danny Brown sound like somebody else so blatantly, where it's not like a direct reference like the Nas stuff, where he's like clearly still himself, referencing somebody else. This is him being fit into a template where he's supposed to sound like somebody else, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I haven't heard any Danny Brown pre-Hot Soup. Like, I haven't heard the Detroit State of Minds or prior, so...
Right. Well, I think the only Detroit State of Mind prior to Hot Soup is the first one, and that's probably the most Nas-influenced stuff he's done, so I would check that out. Although the best Detroit State of Mind is 4, which came up...
that's a good tape. I've heard that one, yeah. I like that one. Yeah,
that's between Hybrid and Triple X, and that's, like, pretty much an album. It's like a mixtape, but it's album quality. Mean-ass run of initial tracks on there with Guilty Simpson and T3 from Slum Village and some mean Wajid beats on there, so Black Milk beats. So, but yeah, this one's I don't think Danny really talks about. Like, I think he's mentioned it a little bit in interviews. That's how I knew about it when I was like, oh, he worked with Birdman, but I hadn't heard it until the other day. And I mean, you would expect, like, don't go into it with the wrong set of expectations. Like, the crew's called Reservoir Dogs, and Danny Brown's in it with the Bruiser Brigade guys. That might give you a set of expectations. You have to remember, this is 2003. Hot Soup came out in 2008, 7, 8, 9, something like that.
2008, yeah.
And Danny has admitted that it took going to jail and getting out to like completely change his outlook on both life and rapping. So, and the first few tracks on here is probably the most generic subject matter he's ever dealt with. He's like selling drugs and shooting you, which he's rapped about too, but with a lot more character than he does here. So, yeah,
my big question is, which member of the Reservoir Dogs team would Danny be?
Mr. Blonde?
Mr. Blonde. He's Mr. Blonde. So Danny hasn't had like good work in Hollywood in like 25 years, right? At this point. At this point.
I was just thinking who was the most charismatic.
Yeah. Well,
blonde or pink?
Well, I mean, this Mr. Blonde was the fucking crazy one who cut the guy's ear off, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that was the other thing. The most famous scene.
Yeah,
I've seen the scene, and he's like crazy. So I was kind of thinking about that. Although, I mean, if Zaloopers was around at this time, he would be Mr. Blonde because he's probably the most unhinged of all of them. But this is way pre-Zaloopers. This is pre. I forget who the other guy in Bruiser Brigade is. There are like 2 or 3 bruisers who were not around at this point. So yeah, honestly, the Twitch album Reign Supreme, the Bruiser Brigade album does everything this album does much better. Like, but you can see the DNA of everything. Like, if you remember the 2 Bruiser Brigade tracks on Triple X, this feels like the direct precursor to those, and that was like the direct precursor to that album, which is underrated because it came out on Twitch. Like, it's like a weird bootleg, but I think that deserves to be considered with all the other, legit real Danny albums. I think it's a good posse album. This one's just a curiosity, but worth checking out if you're a big Danny fan, I'd say. So, and I have a review of it that'll go up eventually that has a list of just the Danny verses that you should check out if you don't want to listen to the whole nearly hour of this, which I can understand. And let's get it cracking. Everybody should hear, again, Danny Brown doing fucking Pharrell in 2003 is about as goofy as Pharrell in 2003.
Def will check that review. Every time I watch Reservoir Dogs, which is probably about, I don't know, like 7-8 times now, I always flash back to when that Alt-Right Dogs trailer came out like 4 years ago.
Okay, who were the Alt-Right Dogs? I remember Davis Arini was one.
Yeah, is Arini? Was it Matt Thorny? Is it Matt Forney? I don't know what his name is. It's Matt something. It was the really fat one.
Matt Forney. Yeah, he was like he was like the economist guy or whatever. He was a fucking tool.
Right. I have to look at this trailer again. It was
somehow gotten off track to the Alt-Right Dogs. I forgot that it actually happened. Was it one of the guys who made Sarkeesian effect? Oh, that was Arini. Yeah.
Yeah. No. It was. I'm telling you, it was the. It was Matt Forney. Isn't he a sex pest also?
I'm sure they all are. I mean, clearly.
I don't know. It was it was
the guy who ate the hot dog in the tub. Was that in there? Or the sauce? Like you know who I'm talking about? The other that guy, Jordan. I don't know. I've managed to block this whole period of everything out, and you're digging it back up. So fuck you.
Well, I know. I mean, it was really. I just want to say it was a really great time because in the video, that trailer, which is an iconic trailer, you could not. There were not all of them in it because they needed somebody to film. So if you remember,
I'm looking this up now. I can't believe this.
Well, there's an incredible HbomberGuy video about it, which was like one of the first HbomberGuy videos I ever watched. That's how I knew of him. But he films himself watching this trailer, and he's like, Davis, I will send you my tripod. And he goes and gets his tripod from the garage, and he's like, Davis, I will send you this tripod so all of you can be in the shot when you film this trailer.
Yeah, unfortunately, the trailer itself is off YouTube, but the HbomberGuy reaction video is up. That's like 15 minutes long. I'm not going to sit here and watch that.
No, but it's truly...
I will watch that after the episode, though.
It's truly incredible. I think I've plugged it in like multiple different logs I've had over the years because it's one of my favorite HbomberGuy things he's ever done because it's just so hilarious just watching him react. He's like, why are they called like Alt-Right Dogs? Oh, Reservoir Dogs. I get it. Wait a minute. Why would the Alt-Right co-sign Tarantino? Doesn't he have views that are like directly different to them? And then it cuts to like Hitler getting shot 500 times.
I do. Okay, I've seen it. I remember that. And
it's like the lady in the Hateful Eight getting hanged, like the racist lady. Oh,
I have not seen the new Tarantino. Still, although I do remember Boots Riley did have some not so nice things to say about how he portrays Manson in that film. So maybe,
I don't know. I interesting. I very much find it a piece with Jackie Brown, while also being very unique in its own right. I mean, unique to him. in its own right. I love the film. I've seen it.
I mean,
I've seen it
not so much a criticism of the. If I recall correctly, somebody can feel free to correct me on this because I don't have it handy.
Yeah, I've
right
seen
now.
it I've seen it like 4 times, so I could probably.
It was more that Tarantino was giving credibility to the Manson, like that Manson had a left critique of consumer culture, which he didn't, which obviously Boots does not think so, whereas he should have been. I think that he thinks that Tarantino should have portrayed Manson as more of a clown, which I thought that, from the best of my understanding, the Tarantino portrayal of Manson was pretty close to the portrayal of Manson in Mindhunter, which I did see, which is great, which does kind of portray Manson as a clown. Like,
I mean, Manson is in the movie for one scene, and it's only to kind of not alert the audience, but like essentially, his name is never said. He's never, like, nothing is ever known about him. But we see this very brief scene, and then after the scene ends, you're like, oh, that's Charles Manson. But like, you don't know that at the time. But I think when you watch the scene, it's like this very short scene that has like a little bit of like, it shows he's a fucking creep, and then you're like, oh, that's Charles Manson. So that's really the only thing that's spoken about. And Manson's followers are, for the most part in the movie, like kids, and like you were just living on the margins. So,
I think it wasn't so much the portrayal of Manson as it was the Manson family that he took issue with, and like they're giving credence to their. Again, I don't have it right in front of me, so I don't, and I haven't.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
Really talk about it, but obviously, I hold Boots in very high regard.
Sure, yeah. Boots Riley is undoubtedly a million times smarter than me, so I'm sure whatever he said definitely has weight. I just personally, I don't see a problem with how that was handled. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it for you because you haven't seen the movie, but like,
really, sure.
I think that the film, to me anyway, has very little to do with anything about Charles Manson or the Manson family.
Right. I think it's more about capturing a time, and as best to my understanding, it's about capturing a time and a place.
Yeah,
Hollywood. And like Manson's part of obviously the whole milieu and the whole what's going on, but it's not like directly a Manson family film. Like it's very,
all of that stuff is supplemental, and I think the real thing of the movie is Brad Pitt and DiCaprio's characters are on the decline in their life, and they're like these sad middle-aged guys essentially. I mean, they don't come off as sad, but you can kind of read between the lines. And whose best days are behind them. And Sharon Tate, Margot Robbie's character, like she's like the light of the movie because she never, like, everything is going great for her, and she's such a positive energy and all that stuff, and all her scenes are very positive, very like she's very free spirited, all that stuff. So it's like, I think that's part of the movie. Obviously, the place and time has a big role in that too. But
I hope everything ends up well for her character. I haven't seen that, so no spoilers. But
I will not spoil. I will not spoil. I will not spoil. I will say it is a fairy tale. The movie is a fairy tale, and hence the title.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how his movies have been, more or less, since Jackie Brown, as all of them are kind of wish fulfillment fantasies. Like Kill Bill was a revenge fantasy, a feminist revenge fantasy. Inglourious Bastards is like a Jewish revenge fantasy about the Holocaust. Hateful Eight, Django, like revenge fantasies about like racism, Civil War, etc. Mm-hmm. So that tracks. But I guess to get back on track, so we covered Danny, the Reservoir Dogs album.
I mean, you want to talk about the Nicki project we listened to?
Oh yeah, I guess that
since Nicki Minaj at this point in her career is reduced to hopping on 6ix9ine songs to try to get a hit, which by the way failed miserably. It went number 1, to which we're not really sure about how factual that is and how those some of those views were generated. But it went number 1. And then it dropped to like number 49 the next week or something. Like it was the biggest fall off in the history of the Hot 100. And then that song has since left the charts. So 6ix9ine came back. 6ix9ine has come back, and ever since the first single has flopped miserably. And you just hate to see it. You really do.
Really hate to see it happen to such a nice, talented individual.
Such a great guy. But, he named his album Tattletales. I
got nothing. Fuck off. Just fuck off. Well, Well, I think what's funny about the whole Nicki thing is it was such a craven, desperate ploy for attention, and then Cardi and Megan dropped their song,
Right.
and then just make her irrelevant, like just nuke her off the map right there.
Right. Which in a vacuum should not be how it has to be, but Nicki has chosen to pick fights with these people, so it's just like, well, you kind of deserve it.
Yeah,
You know
like
what I mean?
I feel like we really should be beyond where there's only room for one major female rapper, and I guess
Right.
two. I mean, now like that's the thing is like Cardi's not out there, Megan's not out there picking a fight with Cardi to try and make a name for herself. So they're able to
Megan has nothing but positive words for anyone, basically. Also has very much like, gone through it. I mean, recent events, as we know, getting shot in the foot by a literal rapper. Like,
I mean, if you want to call him that.
Yeah, I mean, he is, but he's a joke. He's a disgrace now.
We'll not even dignify it. Like everybody who's listening to this should know of that situation, and
it's fucking disgusting.
We stand with Megan. He's a piece of shit. We will not even dignify him by naming him, but you know what we're talking about.
No one should go and listen to his stuff. It's actually like I wonder what's going to happen long term, but I hope that he's exiled because that shit is just a travesty. And she defended him, defended from when the cop showed up. Like that whole situation is like you just really feel for Megan because it's like she didn't deserve that, and then she had to go through all the online bullshit of like people saying that, oh well, maybe it was her fault or blah blah blah.
Well, I mean, she's a woman and something happened to her. Of course, it's probably.
Of course, yeah, it's definitely her fault. God, it's fucking
great society. Internet.
We live in a society.
We certainly do. But it was very different in 2007 when Nicki Minaj broke out, and there wasn't room for one female rapper at the top. There was room for none. Right. So, and Nicki decided to essentially. I like everybody else first heard of Nicki when Drought 3 dropped, and the Upgrade You. Like I was pretty stuck on Wayne on the Upgrade You remix, which is interesting because I hate Upgrade You. It's one of Beyonce's worst, most obnoxious songs. But Wayne bodies the shit out of that. And for the longest time, I thought he said, I just signed a rapper named Nicki Minaj. I'm like, Nicki Minaj. And like, I would just skip around to the songs I really liked on Drought 3 because I wasn't the biggest fan of the whole tape for a while. So I never really listened to Nicki's song on there. But it's a good song. And so she wasn't really like a thing for me for a while. And then she started like getting buzz on her. The thing was, I was not somebody who just learned of Nicki when Monster dropped. I was
that was me. That was me.
Right. I was cognizant of her, but I was not into her. But I do remember that whenever her name would come up, everybody would link in the smoking section her going over Warning, the Biggie song. And that's all on here. And she fucking kills it. And that's the thing is like, but you're like listening to it, it's like, damn, okay. And like, I guess that's the thing is you can play that for somebody. It's like, oh, all right, ladies be rapping, ladies be shopping. Girl can actually rap. And the thing is, when she raps on it, she raps very close to Biggie. And then you listen to this, and it's almost the same thing as the Kendrick tape in a different way. Like, she's older, she's more accomplished. What she's doing here is a mimic trick. She's doing the game thing, but she's doing it for a variety of different rappers, depending on whose beat she's on. When she's not doing that, she sounds like Wayne. Like, in the same way that when Drake, like, I mean, we should probably get into Drake after this, too, because I think early Drake stuff. We can talk about him next. But, like, she, like, obviously Wayne signed her, so I think she's kind of leaning on Wayne as her big influence when she doesn't have anybody else to go to. But it depends on what beat she's going on, and whatever she's doing it well. Like, but I think that her whole point here is that she can rap. She's doing this to make a name for herself, but she doesn't have her own identity yet. And it's kind of sad that this is how she has to, although there are two ways she makes her identity on this. One is by successfully mimicking popular male rappers and like trends of the time and doing it flawlessly. And the other is what she would do for the rest of her career is just grabbing your attention with like blatantly graphic sex lines. Like the first thing you hear her say on this tape in the very, very long intro that you should skip if you listen to it, which has a bunch of voicemails, is that you can't see her because she's sitting on your favorite rapper's face.
She does say that. That is true.
And then she follows this up with, it's brilliant and gross at the same time. Again, another Biggie riff is the first song on here. We all know the famous Biggie song, Dreams of Fucking an R&B Bitch. Nicki turns it on its head, dreams of fucking a rap dude. And she starts it off by, she's not fucking Jay-Z, she's not fucking Nas. She is fucking Hellrel and Freaky Zeke.
It's a very strange choice for 2007.
Exactly. Like, this is, first of all, Dipset's not at its peak. And second of all, she's not even fucking like the main dudes in Dipset. She's like,
she couldn't. Cameron didn't invite her into his section, so.
Hellrel looks like a toad.
That guy looks like a sentient camouflage frog.
I want everybody listening to this. Actually, I want Kitten Puke to bring up right now on the screen the cover of the Hellrel mixtape, Eat With Me or Eat a Box of Bullets. I want you to look at this too, where Hellrel has photoshopped bullets in place of his teeth. That is who Nicki Minaj wants you to admit herself having sex with to start off her mixtape.
You said what's the title
it's again? Called Eat With Me or Eat a Box of Bullets.
All right, Hellrel, Eat With Me.
Yes.
Fucking cover. Oh my god! Look at this. Oh my god.
Yeah.
This is incredible.
I know. And I mean, I think it takes some real, balls is probably not the right term to use right now, but this is the first term that comes to mind for her to kick off her tape with that. Like, and that's probably the most personality she shows on it. It's like stuff like that. Like, and it's kind of, it's attention grabbing. It's very, I don't know, like she's not really trolling. She's definitely, trolling is not the right word for it either, but it shows more personality than that she can just do a Jay-Z impression or she can just do a T.I. impression. And she does those over here, and she does those well, or a Biggie impression, or a Pac impression. And so it's honestly probably the best Nicki project overall, but it doesn't have the best Nicki songs on it, because most of these aren't really Nicki songs. And what you would know is a Nicki Minaj song. Right. Like, in terms of her bringing her own personality to the table. Like, you get lines like that. Like, the Dream song is hilarious, but it's also, like, a novelty. Like, you get it. You're probably not going to listen to it that often. And,
it feels like cosplay. Yes.
But I see why she did it. Like, it definitely got her name out there. Actually, I should take that back. That Wayne wasn't the first one to break her in. I'm pretty sure, poor choice of words, I know. Gucci was probably the first one, I believe. But I think she signed with Wayne, obviously. She signed with, Young Money. But I'm pretty sure Gucci got her into the industry. Because when Gucci had his big meltdown, like, one of his big claims was that he was with Nicki first. Everybody, again, Gucci, Hellrel, she has a type.
Especially that era of Gucci.
Yeah. So this was not like clone Gucci coming out of prison like a brick shit house.
Right. My guy did not have pearly white teeth at this point in time. This is not Saint Brick era Gucci. This is not this is not drop top wop Gucci. No, sir.
You're probably getting more than you expected of us rating mid-late 2000 rapper physiques, but there you go.
Honestly, you know what? Hey, Gucci turned himself into a very handsome guy. All respect to Gucci.
Respect to Gucci and or the laboratory that cloned him in prison. We will respect all theories here. Shout out to one of the only features you get on here that aren't Wayne. The Wayne track is the track from Drought 3, by the way. You also get an interlude that's just the first half of Upgrade You, which is just like, I guess, an intro. It's kind of pointless, but whatever.
You didn't like I'm Coming?
I skipped that track. I felt like I knew what we were going to get there, so I just
Yeah.
You get some no names on here, but you also get Gravy, who has I downloaded his mixtape. I have not listened to it yet, but shout out to Gravy and his two mixtapes, Mayor Goonberg Visits Africa and Brooklyn Capo.
How do these people exist?
I don't know, but Gravy
did he Turkey and Gravy? What is what is the podcast opinion on Gravy?
I don't know. Gravy. The podcast has no opinion on Gravy yet, but maybe next week.
What about Gravy? What about Gravy? The food, the dish.
Oh, Gravy the food. We're pro Gravy the food, but it's like definitely a once or twice a year thing, because if you have too much gravy all the time, you're going to spoil it. Also, pretty much turkey gravy only. I'm not really big on sausage gravy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I can do gravy like Thanksgiving time, like 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 holiday time, really. Like you said, like once or twice a year. You get some turkey and gravy. It's just as good as people say it is. But I'm not going to be having gravy in my weekly or monthly dinners. Like,
Well,
I don't even know what else you'd use it for, to be honest with you.
I do have a theory here, though, is that like she has the several tracks where she goes over Biggie stuff. She raps like honestly, she seems to have big for somebody who clearly like Lil Kim is a reference point for Nicki. Like in terms, she had like her first major beef was with Lil Kim. I don't know who started that first because they both have that same mindset of there can only be one woman. But honestly, I think this Gravy dude was probably like a Birdman idea of I have a Lil Kim, I need a Biggie, right? So he found some fat guy. He's like, "You gravy, playboy." And I mean, clearly it did not work out too well for Gravy in the long run.
Was he also doing? Was he also, just to flash back to your point earlier? Was he also Birdman was also doing Hot 16s while rubbing his hands with some doves coming out in the background on Gravy mixtapes? I would love to hear that. Gosh, what a I'm imagining Birdman on Gravy mixtapes, and it's kind of sending me here.
Issues.
So
Chance to pee.
Yeah, great stuff there from Birdman and Gravy. Yeah, so
we had a bit of technical difficulties there.
We're talking about Gravy.
We were talking about Gravy the rapper and Gravy the food.
I think we ended on was joking about how Birdman found Gravy, and I thought Birdman was going to appear on Gravy mixtapes to try to make them hot by doing some Hot 16s while rubbing his hands together, and doves come out in the background.
I mean, there's definitely a joke to be made here about Birdman being a bird, and you got turkey, you got gravy, bird and gravy.
Bird and gravy. Oh, is this like Father Like Son, but it's just Thanksgiving edition, where it's.
That's another equipment one you need to look up is the Young Money Thanksgiving.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah,
Young Money, Christmas Young Money album too. Didn't they do one of those? Maybe I'm wrong.
No, but I can't believe that they mixed that. There was the Dipset Christmas album though.
The Dipset Christmas album, yeah.
Yes. Which has Jim Jones Jim Jones and Stack Bundles rapping about like selling cocaine out of Santa's sled. Over what is basically the Christmas and Hollis beat. I don't know how they got away with like selling that beat again, but I love that album. It's so stupid. And I guess
Christmas and a very Dipset Christmas. It's a Wonderful Life, but it's the Young Money version of It's a Wonderful Life.
What if Birdman was never born, and then you just see a vision of like all these artists getting paid, having houses, having deals?
Lil Wayne not like having so much less money than Drake because Drake got out earlier. Like, actually, genuinely tragic. Like,
Bangladesh actually like has a career and like has like 3 houses of all the money he should have made off a Millie.
Tyga never gets popular. These are only
Tyga's actually in jail where he should belong.
Tyga's actually just like known as a sex pest. Who like very much, bro? We let Tyga date a 17-year-old when he was 26, and no one did anything.
This happened, and then fucking Kanye and Charlemagne joked about it on the Breakfast Club. They were like, "Oh yeah, he redshirted her." Ha ha ha! Pedophilia. It's funny. Well,
I
like. How was that? How are we letting him like? I mean, I won't say that we let Tyga slide because I don't think we give Tyga any rope, and it's like his music is trash anyway. Like he has not had a single, even remotely worthwhile song in his life. But like, I feel like the industry, like that was like low grade R. Kelly level, letting somebody slide. Like he made somebody a little bit of money, so it's like we're just gonna turn a blind eye to this super suspect shit.
Yeah, it's not good.
Well, speaking of the Young Money and not good and that era, we also have Aubrey Drake Graham and his there was definitely room for improvement early in Drake's career.
Oh, we did. Now this is another thing. We did on our Drake episode. We did make the same. We did make the same joke, but we can get away with it because no one's
It's an
heard that
evergreen,
episode.
and also, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that episode actually will probably be going up eventually because
At some point,
have it. So it was a good episode, and
really good.
I don't know how much detail we went into about the Drake stuff.
We did not talk about room for improvement because to me, there's not anything to talk about.
You're right. Yeah, honestly, the pre-Young Money Drake stuff is like I'm gonna feel like a broken record on this because if you ever heard me talk about it, he's trying to be Fonte, and then before he tried to be Wayne, he's trying to be Fonte. And Drake I don't know if he'll still admit this now, but for a long time he totally copped to it. And I've always said that the most endearing thing about Drake is that his rap fandom, his sincere rap fandom.
He's always in the Narwhal interview and stuff. Like he always comped to like. Yeah, I was a huge Fonte stan. Like that's what I was trying to be. Like, yeah, he always and like obviously like he'd said he like Wayne was like his his guy too. Like he was trying to. I feel like with Drake like pre. I mean, he probably still does the rap nerd fandom thing now, but like in interviews maybe. I mean, I haven't watched a Drake interview in a long time, but like pre like Scorpion era Drake was definitely like that was always something that. Like you said, was the most endearing thing about him, where he was just like, yeah, I have all these influences, but like, I own that. You know what I mean? Like,
I would say that the thing about these early Drake tapes that I can say, and there are several, and you really don't need to listen to any of them, with the possible exception of Comeback Season has a few okay tracks on it.
He goes over a Dilla beat.
Which is not the best. I mean, like, it's funny to read the YouTube. I mean, never read a YouTube comment thread, but the comment threads on that are pretty funny because then you have like Drake stans who think it's the best thing ever, and then you have the Dilla real hip hop stans who think it's the most expensive thing ever, and it's really just fine. It's like
it's really it's in the middle. Yeah,
it's straight down the middle. The thing about Drake in this period is that he has all these influences and he wears them on his sleeve and he doesn't really synthesize them. Whereas as his career went on, like his music or not, he got way better at synthesizing his influence. And I would say that he was never the most original artist, but he got really good around the time of So Far Gone, of taking like, your Fonte, your Wayne, your UGK stuff from all these disparate places and throwing them together in a pot and coming out with something that was universally appealing or resonated on a more broad level.
Yeah, and I think that I would argue that I don't even think Drake had his own sound until Take Care, because I think Thank Me Later, there were parts of it there, but some of it was still doing that Wayne, UGK, Fonte stuff. Like really Wayne, more of Wayne at that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that So Far Gone is significantly better than Thank Me Later.
Yeah, I agree.
I think Thank Me Later actually feels like it has more compromise to it. I think So Far Gone is pushing in the direction that Take Care would. I also think So Far Gone is better than Take Care. We won't go into the Take Care argument. You can listen to the Drake episode when it goes up and hear me shit on Take Care for 20 minutes.
But, it wasn't really an argument in that episode. I thought we had a solid discussion because I get all your
discussion about it.
I Take Care is not my favorite Drake like it is for a lot of people. So I hear all of your criticisms of it. Like I
will say that I agree with you that he defines his sound on that album. His sound is that he paid Weeknd to write an album for him.
Right. It really 40 found. I mean, 40 had been good before, but it was like that was really like 40 coming into his own too on Take Care. Like 40 do this like moody down tempo, sad boy like sound, like wintry Toronto sound. Like I'm sitting in front of a fireplace, being sad about my exes, like kind of sound. Like, and that was like 40 nailing it.
That's right. And that would just pretty much define, like when you say people to define like the OVO sound, I think they still think of Take Care, to a lesser extent Views, but I think when they think of the stuff on Views that they think of as the OVO sound, it's kind of like a pale Xerox of what 40 defined on Take Care. Although,
yeah, I think
I think that the 40 beats are not the problem with Views. It's the fact that it's 8 million years long and Drake doesn't seem invested in it.
I actually I think Views and Thank Me Later have similar problems and similar strengths. I actually prefer Views to Thank Me Later, but I get the. I think in our episode, episode was recorded like a year and a half ago for reference for audience. Yeah. But in the episode, it was a long time ago. It might have even been almost 2 years ago. But it was. I remember saying like Views is such an album where I'm just like sometimes I'm like, oh, I like it, and sometimes I'm like, ugh, I don't. But then I'm like, oh, I like this. Like how Keep the Family Close is like the whiniest Drake song, but also it's like the most unique Drake song in his whole catalog. Like it's a very interesting album. Like Drake tried to make a masterpiece with that, and obviously he fell short, but also there's like a quality about that album that I find really interesting. So that's my side Views tangent.
I would say that just completely apropos of nothing. What's with the bootleg unauthorized sections on RYM where you click on it as like 72 bootlegs, and then you click on it and it's like they're only 35? Because I was saying that one of the things we've done in this episode is we've clowned on early mixtape covers for being horrible, and Drake definitely has one that I want to bring attention to. I think I did in the episode, but this is more an advertisement for the Drake episode than anything. But this is not an early Drake tape era, comeback season era, or room for improvement era, but Heartbreak Drake 3, the first semester, one of the most embarrassing mixtape covers of all time.
Well, these are...
How old was he when he put this mixtape out? Because he's like posing like he's in high school with a varsity jacket on. The most Photoshopped thing you've ever seen. And it's something else, man. It's like definitely like, this is the mixtape cover you put out right after you go off of Degrassi. And he'd been off Degrassi for several years.
This is
trying to be
like,
taken serious as a rapper.
This is like a CD that you just see at the gas station, like that sort of thing. Like it's really that kind of cover. Thankfully, it's not official.
Yeah. And it's got like a lot of songs I've never heard of from Drake before, including Material Girl, which I really hope is somebody grafting like a bootleg Drake verse over a loop of the Madonna song.
That's got it. So, hopefully, there's a fan made Drake over. It's the Drake verse from like. What Drake verse would fit over a Material Girl? What are we putting over there?
I don't know, but the next track on the tape,
it's like Successful. It's Successful.
No, Unstoppable.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's like him just whining about, like, that's him like trying to be like a girl, like rapping about girls who think they're unstoppable because they just got drunk at the club or whatever, so that seems like it would fit. The next track on the tape is just It's just called Featuring Birdman. That's the title.
Featuring Birdman. That's my favorite.
And for some reason, Nipsey shows up on this. There's just a Nipsey Hussle track in the middle of it. So yeah, I'm never going to listen to this, but I wanted to call attention to that mixtape cover. It's not as bad. I mean, the real takeaways from this are watch all the Broken Equipment videos and look at the Hell Rel Eat With Me or Eat a Box of Bullets cover.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Moving on from Drake to, do you have anyone you like?
I mean, we could do, I have a few, I did, I know we're going to do Mach at some point, but I did, some that I listened to the first ever no label Migos mixtape.
All right. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to listen to this. So
it's very long, so you didn't have to. But I will say, like, I listened to this partially on the backs of there is an Odema review of it that I had seen a long time ago, and it only came out a year before the YRN mixtape came out, so it like kind of makes sense in their timeline. Also, they're so young here. Like, it's actually
looking at the RYM page, it looks like a Jug Season.
There is. Yeah, I guess Jug Season is the first official mixtape of theirs, which has a very. It is before this, so I have not listened to that one, but it
also has a Bop secondary.
It does have a Bop secondary.
I don't really associate them with Bop, but now I'm kind of picturing them over like a Zan with that lean sort of instrumental.
Yeah,
would be interesting. But
Migos over a Sicko Mob type beat, that would be interesting. I have not heard it, so I cannot speak to its quality. Its rating is very low, but I take it with...
its rating isn't terrible, but I also feel like RYM never really appreciated Migos that much.
No.
So I don't really...
I don't
think it's... that
Even their
bad.
best stuff, they didn't appreciate. Yeah.
The last track on this no label is, I believe, Kush Cologne, but they spell cologne really wrong, so I thought it said Kush Calzone, which makes me think of a calzone filled with weed, which sounds kind of cool. This is a nearly 80-minute tape, so I'm probably never going to listen to it. But is there anything on here that I should seek out, like individual tracks?
Tupac and Biggie, good song. You don't. It doesn't sound like it would be a good idea based on the title. But it is
according to Nodima, it has nothing to do with the title.
It does not. It does not. I like how he uses the F Cancer like comparison piece, because it has nothing to do with the title, and F Cancer has nothing to do with cancer. Otherwise, Young Thug, who just says "fuck cancer," shout out to Boosie.
It's like Pissy Pamper really has nothing to do with diapers, unless you count how Cardi sounds like he needs a diaper on it.
It also has nothing to do with Kid Cudi, except Cardi saying, "I smoked dope like Kid Cudi" or something like that. And,
I think he actually mentions Cudi on it, so it's like has more to do with Kid Cudi than it does with like Pissy Pampers. But
I mean, that's got to be the best song ever that has that title. Like, what kind of title is that? Oh, God!
And it's the best song ever that's never going to
coming out. Like I said, Whole Lotta Red is the best album that will never come out. Best bootleg ever. Best. I've already made my case for that. But yeah, unfortunate.
I guess when we eventually do the Cardi episode, we get fed up for waiting for Whole Lotta Red, which will eventually happen. We'll do the Cardi episode, and then we can fight with Kit and Puke over whether Whole Lotta Red or Yandhi is the best album that will never happen.
Yeah.
Because I know he's listened to like more Yandhi bootlegs than anybody.
He's, for someone that isn't like a Kanye stan, he's like obsessed with Yandhi, or he was.
I know, like he doesn't really care about any real Kanye albums, but
right.
he's super obsessed with
that. That is such a Wyatt thing to do, though. Like, he doesn't care about real Kanye albums, so I'm gonna listen to the bootleg ones. Like, that's just how he is.
Yeah, so, like he can quote like everybody's verse on Alien, but if you asked him to quote like anything from Twisted Fantasy, he probably couldn't.
He'd be like, this album is like good, I guess.
This album's good, I guess. Now let me quote you all the variations on Kanye shouting out Alex Jones on this 9-minute song that no one's really heard.
Honestly, true. But yeah, Tupac and Biggie is a really good song on this. Probably the best song on it. Also, the Kush Cologne song at the end, it is pretty good. I gotta say, just the spelling is amazing. Also, Bando is on this. Not the ideal version of Bando, which is the one on the YRN tape, but it's still good. It's still good. Yeah, I don't have much to say otherwise. Most of these songs are like fine songs. Also, I mean, there's a song on here called Pull Out, which
I can guess. It's not about. Just. We don't need to go in.
It's really not just about that. I'll just leave it at that. We'll read Nodima's synopsis if you want it, but that's a good one. So there's like some good ones here. Like, it's not a bad tape. It's not good, but it's not a bad tape. It's mid. You know, it's what you'd expect. That they're not refined, but their next mixtape would be so much better. But yeah.
I mean, this was 2 years before, a year before Versace. So
yeah,
Versace.
A year before Versace. Yeah, they were figuring themselves out. It's not a bad tape. It's just kind of average.
Yeah, I decided recently that my favorite Migos release is Trap Symphony.
I did see that, and I have heard that one. It's not. I mean, it's good. It's definitely good. It's not my favorite of theirs, but I'm surprised that it was your favorite. Why is that? I wanted to ask you.
Just because I feel, Culture would be my favorite, except there's one song on there. I'm going to have to look it up now. I hate how it starts off with Khaled. I thought
the Khaled intro?
Dumb fucking Khaled intro. That's like up there with the dumb Raekwon intro on the Griselda tape, where it's just like, shut the fuck up. What's the one song
It's all ass. Yeah, it's all ass.
All ass. Yeah, that's like. Ugh.
It's a very boring. It's a very boring song about ass. Yeah.
Right, but other than that, that's probably their actual best one. I'm just saying, but the versions of all 3 tracks on Trap Symphony, I think, are the defining versions of it. I've never seen scene. Never heard Takeoff sound as good as he sounds on those versions, and it just made me want to hear like a whole like entire like all of their best songs done in that style. Although I'm pretty sure that I think that if it's not Versace is their best song, then Stir Fry is their best song. But I could also see you making the argument that Stir Fry is too much of a Pharrell song, that he kind of hijacks the vibe a little bit.
I think, I don't know, maybe. I think Culture, No Label 2, that one has some of their best. I mean, the RNT, the tape, does have Cross the Country on it, which is a insane 6.5-minute song that justifies every second of its length, and is easily one of the best like mid 2010s trap songs. Like, and if you want to talk about a great Takeoff verse, there's a great Takeoff verse on that. All three of them do. Like Quavo on that is like rapping. Like it doesn't. It's not Quavo like in his pop trap bag. Like Quavo is rapping his ass off on that song too. Which, I mean, Quavo in his pop trap bag is good too. I'm not shitting on that. I just like that Cross the Country song is a monster.
Shout out to 108 Mics, not that 108 Mics, the other one, who finds this part of the podcast to be absolutely excruciating and is probably throwing his phone across the room about how much he hates Quavo. Because he hates Quavo.
He hates Quavo. It's interesting. He like is not a he's just not like a pop trap guy for the most part. Which I guess Quavo Oversaturation has long since hit, so I get it. But I mean, Quavo was like that guy for like a 4-year run, at least a 3-year run. So,
well, I think that Quavo definitely defined a style and then flooded the shit out of the market and got lazier as he was doing it. So I can understand where the burnout would set in, and also the ironically named Quality Control, which just about as ironically named as Complex Media, just. Like Quality Control really they lost the plot pretty quickly in terms of speaking of flooding the market, they were 10 times as bad as it's just that whole like the rap mindset, like the whole Master P mindset, no limit idea of just get as much, like you're hot, so get as much shit out as possible. I think they kind of epitomized that, so they definitely burn out their audience, I think. So
it's funny because like
Culture 2 considered a flop, or did it do well because they
Culture 2
screen spammed it?
Culture 2 did well commercially, but it was people clowned it for being long. I think Culture 2 is like fine. It's too long. I really like some songs on there. Like Made Men is one of my favorite Migos songs. Like that's the one where it kind of is like a Today Was a Good Day cover. It's sort of like that. That's a really Takeoff floats on that. He like comes in with like an intro hook and he's like, "I'd like to welcome you to the Migos show." And like it's a genuinely like sweet moment. But there's some good songs in there. It's 24 songs. It's way too long.
I have it at a 4, but it's probably closer to a 6. It's just like I never have been able to sit through the whole thing in one.
Yeah, I gave it a 6 because there are some songs that I really like on there. Like the 21 Savage song, I really like. I actually think the Post Malone song is pretty chill. Post Malone is faceless on it, which is fine. Like that's probably the best case scenario. The Drake song is like obviously like a ploy for a streaming hit, but I kind of like it. Superstars I always like, Narcos I always like. So there's songs in there that I liked, but it's way too long. Yeah. Well, but in terms of Migos, Trap Symphony is good. I am surprised that like it's one of your favorites by them, but it's good. It's definitely worthy.
I mean, the Trap Symphony stuff is very like I can
have
see
you heard
where it would rub people the wrong way in terms of it's very like ironic appreciation of trap, and it's like, oh, look what we did. We took the whitest possible, we married these two things together, but really it like in terms of, well, they did the one with the Migos ones, I think were the first ones, because they did this little thing where they did like this kind of smirking interviewer like asked like the musicians like, oh, do you know the Migos? Who's your favorite of the Migos? And like, who are your favorite composers? Like, there's one part that everybody quotes in the comment thread. It's like, who are your favorite composers? And she's like, oh, I like Bach, I like Beethoven. The guy's like, well, do you know Zaytoven? And it's like, you can see where the smirkiness comes into it, but it's like, honestly, when they're performing the songs, it's a good fit. And give me this shit over. The reason I listen to this is because I got a real weird itch. Fucking Metallica put out their dumbass Symphony of Music S&M 2, and I'm like, let's see how bad this is. And it was pretty stupid. But then I got my related bar, the Trap Symphony stuff, and it was one of the Keef songs. I was like, this is really good. I don't think I ever listened to the rest of these, and I did. And there's one of the Keef songs he does, I think it's Finito.
Yeah.
I think it's Finito, and he's
Yeah,
like
he
so offbeat. It's funny, but he like does not like, it's not great. But I listened to the rest of them. The Trippie Redd one's not very, it doesn't really fit for that. But the Migos one really showed like the potential of it. I mean, you can tell when the musicians are actually performing it, like they're really professional about it. It actually fits well. So if you can get past like the whole gross, like, you know, wink, wink, this is ironic thing about it, it works pretty well. And really, you don't have too much rap that's like overtly doing that, like except for, you know, Kanye, late orchestration. I'm trying to think of anything else that actually like Gucci classical. Shout out to Sophia for reviewing all the Gucci just recently.
Yes, well, I was going to say, yeah, I was going to say she has a really good review of a project that I'll bring up later. Yeah, shout out to her.
Sorry, I just got a text that I need to respond. I'll respond to it later.
No, all good.
That's why I didn't respond to that. But yeah, you actually So wait, you want to get to? I didn't know. I wasn't sure.
Well, I guess there were
Gucci one was. So yeah, like what do you want to bring up for Gucci?
Well, it wasn't a Gucci one actually. It was well, there were a couple projects I want. Well, first, you know, Wyatt and I were talking about it or Kid and Puke rather, and I were talking about it last night in the Discord. But the first Black Kray tape I did want to touch on real quick because his career. It says it came out in like 2010, or 2000, and it's a very like 2010-ish cloud rap album. RYM has it labeled as 2011, but the YouTube link I saw it on has 2010, so I don't know. I'm gonna go with that. But anyhow, it's called Ain't Shit. It's fine. Like it's cool. It's very early cloud rap. Like you can tell, like it has that quality of like the version of cloud rap where it kind of feels like there's occasionally like boom bap and R&B influences in it too. And it just feels like it wasn't like refined yet, but you could kind of see where he was going with it. There's some really like heavenly beats on there, and like, but Kray himself like wasn't at his like peak yet. And it's funny because the very next project put out, according to RYM anyway, is Crack Clouds, which is a fucking masterpiece. So the fact that he went from that project to like his, you know, Witch House cloud rap, you know, classic is which is now bolded on the website, which is cool. But yeah, the fact that he went from like that project where he just sounded like he was still kind of just in the background over these beats, and then he did Crack Clouds as like his next project is a pretty incredible like leap from freshman to sophomore tape. So that was just real quick I wanted to touch on. The Sophia review, I believe, I was going to talk about the Gravity Boys compilation tape because this is the very early Drain Gang days when like Young Lean was the poppin' one out of the, and he wasn't in the group, but like just adjacent wise. Yeah, she has a good review of it. That's like basically talks about how it's like, you know, real like great ethereal like pure teenage expression, which is like exactly what they were doing in 2013. And like most people that know have listened to like a lot of Dre and stuff. I mean, it could be an entry point. I guess it could have been an entry point earlier. Now they have a lot more material, so I don't know if it's as good of an entry point now because like their stuff sounds a lot different. But it's a great tape. It's a compilation. It's a fan made compilation that they approved of, so it became like official. And like it has all of their like really, a lot of their really like now canon like early singles. Like Bleach is on there with Blade and Echo, and Echo's Hold Me Down Like Gravity, which is commonly cited as like one of the best Drain songs. And Magic is Strong, and I'm Lost is on there, and Be With You's on there. So it's not a very long tape. I think it's like 10, 12 songs. But it's great, and it's like a cool like introductory point to them if you want to like start chronologically, which I did not do, but I went back to it later and was like, oh yeah, I've heard these things from most of these singles already. So yeah, Great tape, and she has a really good review of it. So that's what the review I was saying. It's like very cold, and the atmosphere is super blissful. Like if you've listened to like a Drain project, and like you get that like blissful, weightless kind of feel, like you know what you're gonna get on some of these songs. But yeah, good.
Well,
good.
as we established on the show previously, Scandinavian cloud rap is our defining aesthetic.
It is my defining aesthetic.
And shout out to the other review on the page is by Too Broke to Care, aka CB to the Dog, who will be our next guest on our upcoming Travis Scott episode. Also has a review of this project. Also, I have nothing to say on it because I haven't heard it. But.
I think he would revise this now because he wrote this review before he came around on Blade. So now he loves Blade, so now I feel like he would revise this review. He gave it a positive score, but I feel like he would bump it up now. Just a hunch, though.
Because it's a positive score, but the review doesn't seem to really support the score. Like the review is nicer. The score is nicer than the review is.
Right. So maybe he would bump up his score in subsequent listens, because now he has since been very kind to Blade. But anyhow, yeah. I know you said you haven't listened to this. I don't know how much of their stuff you have heard, and I'm assuming what it would be the newer stuff.
All I've really heard so far is the White Armor tape, the White Armor beat tape, and again, I've heard like weird like corner stuff, not the main stuff yet. I was going to catch up on it for the episode, but I think you guys already did the episode. So
no, we haven't done the episode yet. I was waiting to do that with you. I thought
duh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got confused with the Jewel Set episode. So
that would have been we did do that one. You would have. I mean, that took me months to get through. So they have so much. Stuff.
We'll eventually do the Drain Gang episode. It's going to take me a while to get through all the material, but
I definitely want to do that. Like us for sure. Like I feel like that.
I've definitely come around more on it, considering that I was very hard on Young Lean in the past, and I feel like more because of Blade than Young Lean. But I feel like Young Lean too. Like I feel like he's been more dedicated. Because the thing about it was, and I think my opinion of this was very much colored by our previous host, was the one who introduced me to Young Lean, and he had a very negative opinion of him. So that I kind of went into Young Lean with a fully formed negative opinion. And I kind of found that I thought that maybe he was... In the past, I will say this. I was more apt to judge an artist for their perceived sincerity. And this was also a problem. I think I discussed this in the Peep episode, too.
Yeah, you did mention this in the Peep episode, yeah. About, like, perception versus, like, what the reality was. But you kind of, like, discovered the reality after the fact.
Right. And I feel like it's just generally not a good habit to be in as a listener to... use that as a metric to determine whether or not you enjoy an artist by whether or not they're sincere enough for you to purity test them or whatever. Whereas it should just be whether or not you enjoy them on a purely musical level. And I think I was letting that color it. Whereas, like, I mean, I won't say that I, like, love everything I've heard from him, but, like, when Kyoto hit. Like, Kyoto was undeniable for me. And that was, like, that proved to me there was something there, that I kept coming back to that song, where it was, like, clearly more, it ran deeper than just an affectation or a 100% aesthetic sort of approach, for lack of a better one. So, yeah, we will get to the Drain Gang stuff, but to go about as far away from Drain Gang as possible for my next entry, somebody that you might not, that a lot of the audience may not know, came up rapping about shooting people and selling drugs, because he might not have shot anybody, but he definitely sold drugs, was Lupe Fiasco.
Yeah.
And he initially came up in when he was a teenager in an unsigned, they were signed for a promo single with a gangster rap group called The Pack, not to be confused with Lil B's group The Pack, who had bands on their feet, but they looked like sneakers. Now, this was obviously out of Chicago, group, 3-man group, and they had one single called, unfortunately, Armpits in 2000.
Truly an unfortunate title.
An unfortunate title for an actually shockingly good song. It's, the hook is about, like, raise it, like, let me see your armpits, which sounds really bad when I say that. But, like, the way it's said in the song has kind of like a Frankendank or MOP vibe, Mash Out Posse MOP vibe to, like, the hook, Onyx sort of thing. And the verses themselves, like, it's a very hype hook. And the verses are, like, generic but well delivered until you get to Lupe's verse. And then Lupe pretty much raps like you would like he always has, like, except he's rapping a lot more like basic brag stuff. I forget, he has like one or two like weird references even then. Like he's since disavowed the shit out of all of this, but I think he's like 16 or 17 on this, and he already comes across like fully formed. It's pretty amazing. And if he stayed doing this style with that approach, I think he could have blown up way sooner. And I think he was probably like, I think that was part of his whole narrative, honestly, is that he was supposed to break out way sooner than he did. Like, Touch the Sky was 2006. I think he'd been kicking around for a deal since like 2000. His skill was on display even then. And the beat's pretty good. If you can look, it's on YouTube, Depak, D-A-P-A-K, Armpits. And again, it sounds stupid when I say it, but the song itself is pretty good. Lupe's verse comes in about the 2.5 minute mark, and it's great. And then he had a tape that circulated about 2003. Shout out to the Lupe subreddit, which is not as insufferable as it sounds. You would think that a Lupe Fiasco subreddit would be the worst place on the internet, but it's actually not so bad. And they have a pretty good outline of his early career. And the earliest tape you can find is called The Future, presented by DJ GI. And what circulates online now, it's got track listed, numbered tracks going up to 8. About 4 of those tracks circulate. And there's a really annoying DJ on it. Like, we're talking early, every bad mixtape cliche you can think of. He's echoing his shit. He does a spider scratch. He's like your Woo Kid type horrible DJ. But the songs are really good. They're essentially snippet length. And it's kind of like Lupe before he fully found out his persona. There's one track on here, Free Chill, appropriately enough, where he openly admits that Chili Chill took the rap for him, that he was moving like drugs, that he was moving dope, and that Chili Chill went up the river for him, essentially, which is like the most honest he'd ever been about that on record. He didn't talk about any of that shit at all directly, maybe in like metaphor, maybe obliquely around Food and Liquor era on some of the tapes. And then on the most recent album, he has a track called Imagine where he kind of alludes to it, but he outright says it on this song, which is pretty fascinating. And it's the most direct he's ever rapped. He still has some double entendres, but it's not like that dorky, you need like rap genius to figure it out type shit. It's very direct battle rapping, and it's great. Like, it's, if you can find it, it kind of goes well with something he put out last year called Chill's Spotlight, which is like 3 older tracks that are from varying points in his career. Run Game is probably the closest to this era, which I think is from about 2003. And yeah, if you're only familiar with the stuff he's done since Touch the Sky, this like might be kind of illuminating to you that he wasn't always like the nerd rapper. Like, he always had nerdy tendencies, but I don't know if you remember, he had one track right around Tetsuo and Youth time. It was called Thought 97, where it was over the OG Bobby Johnson beat, where he's like, because I remember the whole thing that had me worried about the Tetsuo and Youth was he was talking about how he's going to do like a conscious ratchet sort of thing, and it's like, what are you talking about? And then he started going over like trap songs, and it actually sounded good for the most part. There's one song he did called Pussy that's just fucking terrible. Don't look it up. But he had this song, and he had Next to It with Ty Dolla $ign, which never showed up on any album, but is really fucking good. And the Thought 97 song, he talks about how when 9/11 happened, he has some line about Fahrenheit 9/11, but it's like, I was in the trap house when I watched 9/11. And this kind of shows where he's at that point in his life, that like it's interesting as an origin story, I would say. Because I feel like a lot of people that might be Lupe fans only know him from like the skater, the nerd, the anime guy, whatever. But he came up from a different origin story to get to where he was. And he might have always had those interests, but they didn't define him musically. He reinvented himself. And it doesn't feel like it was like a cynical reinvention to capitalize on like a need in the market, which I remember when he first started, there were people like Byron Crawford, that's a real old school blog shout out that no one's going to ever recognize, like kind of called him out for that. Like, you're a fraud, you don't skate, you're just making this shit up, you used to write about selling drugs. But I feel like he was always the same guy, and he just changed his approach in life and on rapping, but this is where he started. And if you listen to that very first verse, he's rapping in the same way that he always has. The subject matter is different. And I think that's like kind of what I really wanted to focus on in this episode is how have these artists changed? And like, yeah, obviously, like, you know, even on Ooh, I Love You, Rakeem, there's still, like, if you look at the B-side, there's still some RZA there. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. And I'm trying to think if there are any, like, I guess I mean, I obviously haven't heard the Lupe stuff. I didn't mention. I know you're not nearly as big a fan of his as I am. So, and I will say that it's probably not something I would seek out if you're not a huge fan of his, because it's the songs themselves. Like, there's obviously, Armpits sounds stupid, and like the mixtape is incomplete. But so it's like a fans only affair. But if you're a big fan, I think it's a show very illuminating as to where he started. But somebody else who started rapping very differently, well, in the same sort of way, but different, I'd say would be Mach, and also very much earlier than people know, because I'd say people were probably, I think we're going to talk about two Mach projects. You've heard both of them. I've heard both of them. People were most aware of Mach at first with Griselda, but he started way back when. And I can't say, unfortunately, we don't have on the show yet King Aaron, who is going to come on to do a bit of a rebuttal to our previous Mach episode. He's the Mach expert, so maybe he could tell me about the circumstances around this release. But the first Mach tape, don't believe the RYM release date that says it's 2017. It was recorded in 2006. It's called Goon, Grizzle. And it's very much of its time, but it's still Mach. You can listen to that, and it still sounds like Mach.
I was going to say that there's a, circling back to our Dead End Hip Hop talk, there is a, the Dead End Hip Hop review of the Jay Electronic album this year was talking about how Jay-Z was, rapping his ass off, but he was rapping like Mach. Well, on this one, Mach raps like Jay-Z for like the whole tape, I think. I know it's still his voice, it's still Mach, and this is not a criticism. Like, it's still his voice, it's still like a Mach release, albeit a tad less refined than like his later stuff. But like, it sounds like Jay-Z.
Yes and no. I would say maybe it's because I heard the Kendrick thing so recently compared to this, and that's like an outright 1,000% style bite, whereas this is more, the beats are 100% like knock off Rockefeller and knock off Just Blaze. Like, I think that's what makes it sound more like Jay than the way Mach's rapping. Mach's definitely borrowing like Jay style cadences and that sort of flow, but I don't think it's 100% like he's trying to sound like Jay. I think that he's just kind of rap. Like, I think everybody at that time borrowed a little from what was popular. And
of course. Yeah. I like I said, I didn't mean it as a criticism. Like, there are some solid tracks on here. Like, I do think I listened to it. I'm forgetting the track list now, but I know Corey is a really good song, but the one with the dumb chorus was, like, it's like the first real track, something hood, right? It's like HOOD or something. Like,
yeah,
it's like, all right.
The track list isn't on the RY.
I think it's called like I'm a Hood, or it's So Hood, or something like that. I'm probably butchering it.
It has a terrible chorus.
Terrible chorus.
Most of the choruses are like unmemorable. That chorus is actively bad.
Yeah.
It's not even on the Metacritic page. I don't know. Corey's probably the best song on here. It's got like a story bent to it. I would say that the most Mach thing I noticed about it is he sprinkles his verses with like religious references, which will become a lot bigger a part of his persona more recently. Like, that he is a theme that he would revisit in a lot more of a detailed and I don't know what the right word is for it. I want to say obscure sort of way, like tracks like Peter and stuff on Mach's Hard Lemonade. He makes like, I don't know, he would definitely flesh out that concept a lot more, whereas here he makes like a crown, like a corona on my head like Jesus is one of the things where he's like talking about shooting somebody, but he also talks like he's going to put like the red dot on their head like Jesus. There's little references that are like a little more oddball than your average like gangster rap album at the time, I would say. He's just a little bit off, but he's still so much more conventional than he would be, like so much more direct. But there's still no, like, I'm trying to think if you would know it's him if you hadn't really listened to a lot of Mach before, because like obviously we both have. Like, I've been listening to his most recent album quite a bit, so he's fresh in my mind, so I can tell it's him right away. But he's not doing a lot of the stuff that is so prevalent. Like, he doesn't switch his flow as much, like, hardly at all. Like, again, he's got, like, the same... He'll go through the tracks and not switch his flow once, whereas now he'll generally switch it up at least a little bit over the course of the song. Mm-hmm. He doesn't do any of the Creole language switching. His punchlines are very direct. There's no, like, double meaning stuff. It's not even, like, as Ghostface influenced as I think it would be, because I think that he really started to pick that up post Griselda. Although if you listen to the Griselda album he did, it's already starting to form its way there. But I don't know. It's I really wish I knew the circumstances of the release of this more. A lot of Mach stuff, it's a mystery. He goes out of his way to bury his tracks. I don't think this actually emerged until post Griselda. So, and it's still very hard to find in any info on it online. Aaron obviously hit me up, correct my shit. But yeah, it's yet another one. I've been saying this a lot throughout the episode. That's like fans will find it interesting on its own, not that compelling, not outwardly bad. Like, I don't think, aside from some of the hooks, there's bad music on here. The beats are very boilerplate, but he does well with them. Like, I don't know. It's a little like, from what you expect from Mach, it's lacking in personality, but it's certainly not lacking for skill. And also, he raps pretty, like, the energy level doesn't flag throughout. Like, it's about a half hour, and he raps pretty hard throughout, which is both a plus and a minus, because I think one of the more engaging things about him is that he's able to convey, like, a different array of emotions without, like, Meek Milling you very hard, without, like, yelling at you the whole time. Whereas here, it's, like, more that hard rap, like, front to back, which is impressive, especially if you're familiar with how he's, like, been late, like, recent career. But it's also, like, lacks that personality that he had, where he's able to, like, convey so much by doing so little.
He is, like, I mean, and I will say with Mach, like, his career is definitely, you can see the arc, but I don't know. I still personally need to fill in a few gaps with his stuff, so I'm not as well versed as you are. Like, I haven't listened to all of his albums. I still have, like, probably 6 to go, I think. Just because his discography, very big, also incredibly hard to find because he charges many monies for most of his projects.
It's very rare art.
It's rare art.
We encourage you to pay legitimate money. I paid out of pocket for every Mach Hommy album I've owned. That's why I live on the street. Is because I had to buy, like, all these vinyls. Did
you pay $3,000 for the GAT?
I had to. There's no other way to get it. So the Gospel According to Mach Hommy cost $3,000.
$3,000.
I'm still paying off the PayPal installment plan on that, but it was worth every penny. Yeah, but moving on to the more the debut that I think most people would associate with Mach, I guess. Although again, like, I covered this on the Mach episode and other episodes of the podcast, where I really started knowing him when he started charging his absurd prices and doing the EPs with Earl and Knowledge. But he actually formally, oh wow, there's 2 on here that I'd never heard of, but from 2013. But I guess, damn, I wish I'd known just those before. But his formal introduction, I guess, with the Griselda crew would be "Don't Get Scared Now" from 2016, which he only did 2 releases with Griselda. Wait, was Roses Are Red? Sorry. Okay, he was on the West Side Project prior to that, but only for 1 track, which is Roses Are Red, So Is Blood. And that's only a 2-minute track, so we're not really going to focus on that. He's actually active part of this project, which is him, Conway, and West Side. Mm-hmm. First of all, like, pretty much every Griselda project has dope-ass cover art. This is some of the dopest. It appears to be the Virgin Mary with a gun.
Really, really fire cover art. Fits
Virgin
the
Mary
title.
with a gun and a thug tier. It's fucking awesome.
And a thug tier.
It's got amazing production on it because you've got Derringer, obviously, the house producer, and I don't know which, off the top of my head, I'm not sure which one's the Alchemist beat. I believe it's only 1 beat, but I'm pretty sure it's Ben's Window with Prodigy on it, which is Conway and Prodigy. Mach's not on that one, but that's a tremendous track. That's probably the best early Conway material. I didn't hear it at the time. If I did, I keep saying this when I listen to early Griselda stuff. I must not have been. I just listened to the wrong features where where West Side and Conway were on everybody's albums. I was like, I don't get the hype. One's boring, one's high pitched. I don't fucking get it. And, like, they've mentioned wrestling a lot, so I should be more interested, but I'm not. But then, obviously, if I listened to the big Ghost release they put out around this time, I would have been into them from the start. And if I listened to this, I would have been on them from the start. And this is an interesting transition release because it starts with a bunch of Mach Hommy, and then he goes away. Which is kind of the story of Mach with Griselda.
It's really apropos. I also really like your review for this, by the way. I wanted to mention that because it is interesting to view this through 2020, like through this lens. Like, where we've seen all these artists go and how Conway and Westside have improved, and Mach, I mean, same with him, but like how they've all like evolved, you know? It still feels like Griselda hadn't quite found it yet. They were very close.
Yeah, this is still fundamental, like, it's still foundational for them, and even stuff like the big Ghost, Griselda Ghost with Mach and not Mach, with Westside and Conway. That's great, but it's still them feeling out their personas. And the one Mach Griselda album, which is Haitian Body Odor from the year after this, which was I believe the last thing he put out with the crew, which is the only real indication that is a Griselda project on it. It has obviously the Griselda by Fashion Rock. Like, it has that rock on it. It has one Conway feature and some Derringer beats. So that's like, that came out, and then Easter Gun Day 2, and that was it. Then you heard Easter Gun Day 3, where obviously things had gone south, and Westside tells Mach to go get him a painting. And
yeah.
So, but yeah, at this point in his career, it's like Mach has definitely evolved from where he was circa 10 years ago with Goon Grizzle. He's developed like that. He leans into his accent more. He's doing the Creole stuff. It's like he's owned all the eccentric parts of his personality, but he hasn't quite fully integrated them into the whole package that it would be. Like, the production is still defined more by the sort of stuff that Prodigy would rap over. It's like very much more like Prodigy being around is a big signifier. Alchemist being around is a big signifier. That's the sort of sound they're going for. Mach isn't quite as weird yet, and like Westside, like, and again, like, I think that Westside would probably deny this, but Mach's weirdness helped define Westside's persona too. Because Westside can be weird as fuck too. Like, look at some of the shit on Brigade. Like, there's some he's left field shit on there.
He's weird.
I don't think you would have gotten had Mach not been a foundational part of their crew.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that, like, Mach definitely had an influence. I mean, Westside was always into, like, the fashion and art stuff, but, like, Mach was definitely, like, high art, like, rare art, blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, so I feel like that's part of his influence. Like, the sophistication, the air of sophistication, you know, that comes with Griselda, that we know Griselda now, where it's like that balance of, like, grit and, you know, flashy lights versus, like, you know, if Mach was never there, like, does Griselda, are they as well-rounded as they are now, you know? We don't know. We have no idea.
Right. Also, shout out to the ultimate lost album, the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant of whatever, that I did try and find for this podcast, but I couldn't. If you found this, you're lying unless you show it to me. Tana Talk 1, allegedly from 2004 to 2006, the earliest Griselda project of any kind, even though Benny wasn't in Griselda technically until Mach left. Although, don't tell Benny that, or else he'll shoot you. Because
he'll shoot you.
He really does not like it when you say that he was a replacement for Mach.
Nor should he be given that label, you know, at this point, especially.
No, I mean, he definitely is much more of a part of the crew. Although I feel like there is still a certain sort of fan that will think of it as like he wasn't there from the beginning, so therefore he isn't like truly part of the crew. But at this point, he's far more of a part of the crew than Mach. Mach has defined his own thing. Mach and Fahim are their own thing. Griselda's its own thing, but I don't think Griselda becomes what Griselda is without Mach there from the start. And I think this project is a great way to chart the progress. Like, you start here, then you have Griselda Ghost, then you have Gun Day 3. You have this, Haitian Body Odor, and Griselda Ghost are like the trilogy I would start with, and Haitian Body Odor is where it's like the breaking. Haitian Body Odor and Gun Day 3, the single, are probably like the dividing line, I would say. That's where Mach splits off.
Yeah.
Mach splits off, and Benny comes in.
And it was really a seamless transition, honestly. For two very different rappers, you know?
Well, I think that both Mach doesn't get credit for his ability to craft a narrative in the same way that, and Benny, okay, I would never say, again, Benny would probably shoot you if you said that he had weird tendencies, but Benny has an eye for detail that gives his stories the sort of credibility, but like he's one of more tell you like a straight up street story with like a straight up narrative. Mach is not that direct, but he's able to convey a narrative or a place in time through those weird details. Like Benny might come up with that detail like as a bit of color for a verse to give it personality. Mach will tell you a story where it's nothing but those little details, and you might have to parse out the actual what he's saying, if that makes sense.
Right, because I guess it's fair that like Benny is, well, certainly more direct, but has the capability to be imaginative as well. Like it's, Benny is certainly no slouch, and I feel like they both put in their fair share of essential material since Mach left and Benny came in, and Mach did his solo stuff, and Benny's solo stuff. Like they've both been key voices in that gritty like side of underground rap.
I would say that, I mean, this was a flawed comparison, but the best way I can think of is the difference between Mach and Benny is like Benny is more like Ghostface on Cuban Links, and Mach is more like Ghostface on Supreme Clientele.
Like the free associative, like
versus the more direct cinematic style of storytelling.
Yeah, I get you. Both that's good.
Both equally quality, both equally credible, but enjoyable and in different ways. So I'm trying to think of anybody else we haven't really touched on. There's the very first Denzel project, which I always want to call King Remembered in Time, but that's Big Crit album.
It's Big Crit, yeah.
But this is a very similar title that I'm going to look up now. It's like King Remembered Tape or something.
It's got some. It's got the Space Ghost influence too. That Raider Clan.
It's King Remembered Underground Tape, 1991 through 1995. It has absolutely hilarious. I can't believe that we're allowed to keep this on the RYM track list because it's not grammatically correct. Because every track has a ton of exclamation points at the end. Yeah. Now that I said this, Diction will probably go and change it. Please don't do that.
You're implying that Diction's going to make it this far in the episode.
Yeah, Diction probably tuned out after. Once he found out there wasn't a Charles Hamilton part of the podcast, he tuned out. Everybody else did. But also, this has a hilarious cover art that I didn't notice, where it's like the state of Florida is made to look like it has a gun on the end of it, and it's leaking lean from it.
It's leaking codeine, yeah.
Leaking codeine, and it's got like the classic pen and pixel font to it and everything. So great, cheap Photoshop art to it. This does not have production credits on it, but based on who's manning the production board, and by production board I mean somebody found a Mortal Kombat soundboard for the ad-lib, just hitting the scorpion button over and over, I would bet an entire bag of fucking weed that it's Space Ghost Perp. This is fun. It's very thrown together, but it's teenagers having fun making music in that Odd Future sort of way, but the early Odd Future stuff felt very much like they were doing it for an audience in a performative way, where it was a bit especially at least from Tyler's end, more like rehearsed, like they knew they were being watched, so we're going to act like we don't give a fuck, but we actually give a fuck how it comes across. This actually feels like a little bit more documentary footage of teenagers just fucking having fun, listening to the shit they like to listen to, bullshitting, driving around, smoking, drinking, partying. Denzel could rap even then, even when he's bullshitting. Like clearly a lot of these are off the dome freestyles. He already had a flow. He already had a way of coming up with corny lines that shouldn't work, that he has the charisma to sell. I can't think of any of them off top, but he still does this to this day. Like the big example was, of course, on Taboo, I was at my lowest, no Peter Griffin, which I still hate that line, but on the song I'm like, it doesn't ruin it. But any other rapper, like imagine J. Cole saying that line.
I will say another Family Guy line, which I don't think you know this, but there's a Doo-Wop Kane bar where he says "Family Guy, I'm Peter," which is just I don't think you've heard much of Doo-Wop Kane's music.
I have not, and now I'm not going to. I don't need to hear these Seth MacFarlane ass bars, but
it's a very absurd bar. He's very absurd with his lyrics and style. So,
the beats on this are very much indebted to what you expect from Space Ghost Raider Clan at this point in time. Very Memphis-y, early mid '90s DJ Paul style. There's a back-to-back where he flips the X-Files theme followed by the Twilight Zone theme, and that's fucking fun, really funny. The UGK tribute and the DJ Paul tribute back to back is really fun. I keep saying fun with this because I don't want to say it's technically good because there's a very unpolished quality to it, and I feel like I'm being a little pandering. I'm like, oh, it's fun, it's charming, but really it is. It goes by quickly. I don't want to oversell it, but again, if you're a fan, it's enjoyable. If you're a fan of the stuff they're referencing, it's enjoyable. Skip track 12. It's like 7 minutes long. I'm pretty sure Space Ghost was just being really just fucking with the listener by seeing how long they could tolerate this weird dance party thing that he keeps doing ad-libs over. Denzel's not even on the song. You will probably get sick of hearing from both Scorpion and the whoopsie Mortal Kombat guy by the end of this. But other than that, like, yeah, it's enjoyable. It's just fucking around music that shows that Denzel pretty much always rapped like the way he does now. So when people say that he sold out or changed his approach, like, I hear the same guy on Unlock that I hear here in a lot of the way he's rapping. So fuck off. Like, he's like, he'll change his style up for certain projects and certain songs, but he's fundamentally the same rapper. I hate hearing when like this whole Denzel Curry sold out bullshit. I think it's a really tired talking point.
It was a lot. I'll say this: it was a lot cooler to like Denzel Curry before Taboo came out. Like, liking Denzel Curry was like cool and interesting, and since Taboo, liking Denzel means like you're basic or whatever. I just think it's funny how like opinion turned very quickly amongst a lot of listeners.
And I guess I should. Unfortunately, I downloaded it. I did not get a chance to listen to it, but and Denzel reminded me of, and mentioning Taboo reminded me of my favorite song on Taboo is the one with JPEG on it. And I did download the earliest Peggy stuff under the name Devon Hendryx. I've heard the Ghost Pop tape, but that's not the earliest of it. Ghost Pop tape is excellent. Problem is, it's super bloated, and if you're not into what Peggy's doing that early in his career, I could see it getting on your nerves. The earliest Devon material is called Generation Y, and it's from 2011, and I have not listened to it. Have you?
No, I have not.
What's the earliest JPEG stuff you've heard?
Oh, actually, wait a minute. Hold on. I've heard. All right, I'm looking at his other alias right now. The Hendrix, the Devon Hendrix. Oh, I've heard the Ghost. It's the Ghost Pop tape. Yeah, that's what I've heard.
There's the regular issue of that. I don't know if you can get it anymore because now on his Bandcamp is just the super deluxe.
It's just it's the deluxe one,
which appends a lot of stuff you don't really need at the end of it. Like the last half hour of it is like demos, alt takes, and stuff. It's free, so it's like cool that he's offering it. I could see it burning people out, but it's basically Peggy doing like kind of Frank Ocean-y stuff, kind of like, but with his own sense of humor. It's cloud rappy, it's all over the place, but it's still distinctly him. But he's not like, I don't know, it's hard to describe. I'm not doing a great job describing it, obviously, so it must be. But production-wise, I think he's already there. Delivery-wise, I don't think he found himself yet, and that's why he's hiding behind, like, you know, he still does this. Like, I don't think he's truly confident in his abilities, even no matter how much experience he gets. So he hides behind, like, trolly, sarcastic humor. And back then he was hiding behind, like, you know I'm not good singing. So it's like, and he does that on Cornball. It's like the Pharrell style singing. Like, he knows he's not technically good and people are going to clown him for it. So he kind of leans into it, gets ahead of the story almost.
Yeah.
So I think he kind of does that same sort of thing even that early. I mean, and there's very little serious quote unquote rapping on it, but he still has the same sense of humor, I would say.
Yeah, I think with JPEG on this tape, I like the fact that you can kind of see the linear arc that would go from this to like the communist slow jam stuff to like veteran, or Black Ben Carson to veteran, like stuff like that. This is more. I mean, the genres on this are all over the fucking place, and like for good reason, because they kind of epitomize who JPEG is. Like, there's like hypnagogic pop elements here. There's like ambient pop elements here. There's alt R&B cloud rap here. Like, that's really most of it. And like, we know that like JPEG like has dabbled in all of those things on his like subsequent like big, you know, studio or not studio, but his big like, you know, albums now, like The Veterans and the Here All My Heroes Are Cornballs. Like, so this is kind of like a springboard point for what it's different than what he did later on in his career, but you can like see the progression. And I think that's what's cool about an episode like this that we've been doing is like sometimes the artist just starts off good. And like obviously he has some stuff before this, but this is still very early in his career. Like I can consider this like a mostly a starting off point. And with someone like JPEG, like sometimes you just start off really good. And like I feel like this is a cool project. Like it's a little long now, this like super deluxe version. But in terms of like him actually making this under like, you know, this moniker, I feel like it's kind of the one that probably my second favorite of his. I mean, this one, it's definitely up there for me because it just feels like some like cyberpunk, like all R&B, like cloud rap shit. And if you know me, you know that cyberpunk is one of my favorite, you know, genres in you know, media. And cloud rap's one of my favorite things in, you know, hip hop and music in general. So it's really an album that's sort of made for me in JPEG's whole catalog. So really good, really great stuff. It has like that lo-fi, like, you know, ethereal quality to it. And I would recommend it for anyone who hasn't heard it, which most people listening to this have probably heard it.
Right. I would say that almost, even though it's excessive, the Super Deluxe Edition kind of works for it because the whole approach to the project is like with all the genre tags being everywhere. It's very much an overload. Like JPEG's personality is very like new media in that he absorbs everything and then kind of spits it back out in terms of like a synthesis. And so this is sort of like he's taking in literally everything and just kind of coming like he's not as skilled at synthesizing or of like forming it into songs as he would be, and certainly not in terms of putting together rap verses, but you're getting all of his influences and you're getting him trying everything out. And so it's that whole encyclopedic approach or that comprehensive approach works for it. You're getting everything that formed him. It's formative, I would say, for lack of a better term. You get to see everything that made JPEG, and it's enjoyable. I don't want to say it's like purely like an intellectual exercise or purely just something to have for reference. Like I enjoy the vast majority of music on there. I'd say I probably have more of a tolerance for this sort of thing than a lot of people. Like I have more of an attention span for just listening to like a 7-minute ambient cloud rap excursion thing than a lot of listeners would, I guess. But I think that if you go into it expecting that not everything is going to be technically immaculate, there's a lot to enjoy here. And it's just a bonus fascinating aspect to it that you can trace it directly to where he ended up. And he's still going. So, yeah, I think that, I guess where I wanted to kind of land it, unless you had anybody else you really wanted to talk about, was, is there anybody you want to talk about, or I'll wrap it up?
No, I think we covered the gauntlet here. I think we did. It was a good episode.
Right. I mean, I didn't get to listen to the Cardi one. We'll save that for the Cardi.
Yeah, I have heard that one, but we can talk about that during the Cardi episode.
So I would say that out of everything, which one of these projects would you say is, of all the stuff we've listened to, I mean, it might not even be something that we mention if it comes to your mind, would be the one that you would say actually holds up as something, if any, to listen to, not just as a curiosity, but as something that stands out on its own as like a worthy piece of the artist's discography, if any?
You know, my first choice was definitely "Ooh, We Love You, Rakeem," but I think my actual answer would probably be the JPEG, or the Mach, Hommy, or the Griselda. Don't Get Scared Now. Yeah, one of those two. I think those are the most, because all the other artists that we spoke about, like Drake and Denzel and et cetera, you know, I mentioned Black Kray. We went over like a lot of stuff, but the Migos stuff, like Nicki, all those artists, like maybe without the exception Nicki, but all those artists would do better work shortly thereafter, or at minimum some point down their career. I think with the JPEG, you could make a case that that's like easily one of his best projects. Like I think that that Devon Hendryx, like I think you could, it wouldn't surprise me if that was somebody's favorite JPEG. And it wouldn't surprise me if like that Don't Get Scared Now is like one of somebody's favorite like Mach or West Side projects, So I think those would be the ones that I would cite first.
I would say that I agree with you. I've got 3, and I agree with you on 2 of them. I would say definitely the Devon Hendryx is the one I would say is my most sincere answer, that if you come out of this episode looking for anything you haven't heard Ghost Pop Tape, go for that, because I think it both shows where, predicts where JPEG would go and where he might go, where he hasn't gone yet. Like, I feel there are a lot of directions on there that he could explore, and it stands out on its own. Like, that was my main question. Was that something that would stand individually without the context of where the artist had progressed from that point? I think it has a lot of interesting sounds that are both of its time, like the vaporwave stuff, the cloud rap stuff that you don't really hear a lot of anymore, even though you can hear things that are definitely influenced by it. So very much all of that. The Griselda thing, because it comes from, I think the latter 2 are, that I'm going to mention, are kind of alternate universe things. The Griselda one, I would say, is an alternate universe in which Benny just bubbles under and Mach is part of Griselda. Like, that would start their legendary run. If like Mach stayed in that lane and you don't get any of the weird stuff, Fahim never has a career because he doesn't get to latch on to Mach. Benny just stays like a hard mixtape rapper, never gets the mainstream exposure. And Mach never really gets charged $1,000 for, like, I still have a house because I didn't spend all my money on Mach Hommy vinyl. And
we're glad that you did do that.
And the last one I would say is the Reservoir Dogs album, because it shows an alternate universe in which Birdman gets rich by having Danny Brown be a knockoff version of Pharrell, which is something that I don't think anybody would have ever called. But maybe in this alternate universe, Danny doesn't have to sell drugs, doesn't go to jail, never makes XXX, never gets on the EDM circuit. Like, what if that Let's Get It Crackin' song pops off? And then you have Danny on Drop It Like It's Hot. Then you have Danny on The Voice. Like, Danny wearing the Arby's hat. Like, imagine all of the...
Danny making happy.
Danny making happy. Yeah, Danny in Despicable Me.
Well, you know what we do need, though, is Danny on the Lemon beat. That would actually be fire.
That would be super fire, yeah. So, Pharrell, we know you listen to this podcast, obviously. Get Danny on the next NERD album. And the rest of you, please listen to Ooh, I Love You, Rakeem, while looking at the Hell Rel Eat With Me or Eat a Box of Bullets cover. This has been We Are Living Off Borrowed Time, and we will see you next week. Our outro music is Stagnated Pace by Can Kick, as always.
It ain't gonna never stop. 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 It ain't gonna never stop.
Time will tell. Time is yet to be conquered by man. But when the time is right, perhaps the greatest revelation of all time will dawn upon us.